sure, first and foremost, that nobody is stressed out about being behind. We know those first couple classes that we got to do in person, we drilled into you that you cannot fall behind on CE ever. But guess what? Pandemic, you can. You can fall behind during a pandemic, okay? There was the one clause we didn't know could happen. So we just want you guys to know we realize this. And we're gonna be there for you when you finally can start this process. So even if it's not till summer, it's not till fall, you are still gonna get the support from us. If it's not your original mentor, we will find other people to provide support. All of us trainers are on board to support you, and we're even brainstorming. Maybe we'll have a weekly touch-in appointment where you guys, if you had questions, you could reach out to us. Maybe you'll be assigned a certain person. So we are brainstorming that, and we fully understand that some of you guys will not be getting back into really being able to provide these services until the summer and maybe even fall. So we want you to know we're right there with you. Please don't be stressed out. We are going to be with you when this is over and you're able to move forward. Are there any questions from our last class? Margie is looking at the chat for us. So if you guys have a question, you can put it in that chat box and we will answer that. The agenda for today is one of my favorites, and I know it's one of Josh's favorites, and that is job development. And the cool thing about customized employment is you're not going to be doing job development the way you used to be. It is totally different. We actually tried to find a new name for it and none of us could come up with it. So we just call it customized job development. And it's a really fun process. And that's what we're going to really be talking about today. Any questions in the chat there, Margie? I don't think so from mine that I'm seeing. All right, next slide. Let's dig into the day. You're muted, Josh.
That will help. Well, again, great to see everyone this morning. We're going to have a lot, hopefully make this a fun topic point today. But really, we wanted to give an opportunity to talk as a group about the homework assignment, which was the customized employment planning meeting. So that was what session 7 was all about, and that's what our homework was supposed to be as well. So we totally recognize that not everybody may have had an opportunity to do that with their job seeker just because of where they were at the process. So we just wanted to open up to the group right now. Did anybody in the chat, or if they want to undo their mic, did anybody actually have an opportunity to complete the CEP meeting? Just looking at all the screens. All right, thanks, Dana. If I could just ask, how did that go? Would you mind unmuting and just kind of tell us a little bit about that experience and how you got it set up, and just tell us about it.
It went really good. We met at my job seekers church, and she was there in person, and so were a few other people, and her counselor joined us on the phone. And yeah, it went really well. I had big giant post-ups pre-printed with some stuff, and we went through and filled them out, and everybody was really happy with the visual resume when we looked at that, and really surprised by it.
Awesome. Well, who was all there? Could you who was able to make it? Who did you invite and who was able to make it?
The job seeker, obviously, and her pastor and a family friend, and then her counselor on the phone.
And then who was and what was the job seeker able to interact with everyone? Was she kind of the star of the show? What was her comfort level to everything?
Yeah, she was very comfortable with the people there, and she was able to interact and have her voice heard during the meeting, and yeah, it was very nice.
And then how much time did it take to prep all of it for as far as getting everything organized for it?
I'd say it took probably about an hour to do the post-ups and make sure I had everything ready and set and all the information I wanted with.
Well, tell us a little bit about the activities. Was it to come natural for you? I mean, did the template help?
I was a little nervous at first because I've never really ran a meeting like that or any meetings, but it went really well. And now I feel a lot more confident going into the next one and in the future doing it again.
All right. Did you use the guide at all, or
Yes, very much so. That was very helpful. I brought that along with me and went right down the guide as I was going.
okay. And then as far as the information, I know you had a limited amount of people that were able to attend. That's okay. Were you able to generate any ideas in terms of business connections or things of that nature at the end of the meeting?
We were able to generate a few, so that was very helpful.
You know, and I think that's the biggest thing is we can still reach out, we can still try to make those connections, but when we're talking about job development, we of course want to start with any soft opening that we can, right? Any cookie crumbs that we can follow, people that can make those soft introductions for us. And ultimately, what we're going to be talking about as well is where we believe those skills, interest, and ideal conditions specifically exist in a business and try to target those businesses as well. So how long was the CEP meeting for you, Dana?
Uh, It was probably about an hour and a half, but we did a lot of chatting in between time and
Sure, made it a fun meeting, right?
yes, it was very fun.
All right. And then just out of curiosity, was there any additional information that you guys found out about the job seeker while doing this?
I kind of found out more about what she did and didn't want to do for a job. So that was helpful. The more we talked and kind of brainstormed ideas.
Okay, can you give us a couple of details about that? Like what was kind of not rediscovered, but what was kind of brought up in that conversation?
It was kind of reiterated that she did not want to do anything boring, no like door greeter, nothing where she'd be sitting. She wanted to be very active when she was working. And so that was kind of a big point that was discussed during the meeting.
Well, I think that's really important, just obviously hearing that from her, right? This is like we described before, the phase one discovery is ending, and now job development, customized job development starting. And so really to hear from her the things that she does not want to be doing, the places and environments she does not want to be trying to find a job in, that's really going to eliminate a bunch of different places for us and different businesses that we may approach, right? So, well, overall, it sounds like you had a successful meeting, and we really appreciate you sharing. Is there any other tidbits that you kind of learned through this process, or anything that you thought was exciting or you learned?
No, I just like the whole process. And now I'm excited to keep doing it and go out and do it again.
All right. Well, and this is something, well, thank you, Dana, for sharing.
Mhm.
This is something that we hear quite frequently. We, again, recognize that not all of you have run meetings before, especially a meeting like this. But because it's activity-based and we know there's a lot to go through, but it really is sequenced to be fast and interactive. And once you get that practice in, once you have that opportunity, it just becomes easier and easier. And every time that we've talked to people that were nervous about doing it, and then they actually did it, they're like, okay, that wasn't too bad. And it was actually a pretty fun meeting. I think, just as a professional reference, where meetings get a little stale and things like that is where you don't have that connectivity or that interaction or those things to do. But since it's all activity based, it gives everybody to interact and chime in at their comfort level while still having a flow to things as well. So with that being said, we're going to jump into our small groups real quick, and we're going to have just a conversation about where people are at, and just so we can learn from each other.
Aspects of customized employment, how you get that person's network to launch job development. It is awesome when it works well. So really, we want you to kind of put on a different hat now. Up until now, you've been focused on your job seeker. And of course, you're still focused on your job seeker. But one of the great things about customized employment is the business now becomes your focus. And it really can get you in a lot of doors that you normally can't get into if you can really play this off correctly, where the business is now your focus. And so first and foremost, you have to know concretely the tasks that your job seeker can do. And you should have discovered that all during job development or during discovery. And you need to concretely know where they need assistance, where they're independent, what they do naturally. And you need to know those ideal conditions. What has to be present in that environment for them to be successful? And I know a lot of times that motivational aspect is going to become an ideal condition. So you need to make sure that those elements are there in any business that you're going to contact. And then hopefully you have a business contact from your CEP meeting, and that equals the first place you're going to start looking. Those are what we call the low-hanging fruits, right? You already know your person can do tasks that business is going to benefit from. You already know that all their ideal conditions are in place, and you already have a contact. You don't even have to cold call or anything. It's fantastic. So that is the customized job development equation. A couple other things you really want to make sure you have in place at this time is you need to know how transportation is going to work. Okay, if you know somebody is taking the bus and that bus doesn't get but 2 miles to that business, it might not be an option, or you might have to explore other transportation options within the city. You also need to make sure that you have appropriate funding in place. If you have funding through VR, or do you have a PBA now? You're transitioning from customized employment to job development. If you're in the waiver, you maybe have transitioned from exploration to development. You need to make sure you have those units. So that's another element that you need to make sure that you have in place at this time. So Margie, how many of our people here have done job development before?
I only saw 2 hands in the chat, but I know of 6 additional people that I've either been in small group with or that I know also do job development at their place of work. So at least 8.
All right, wonderful. Well, we're going to try and teach you some new ways to go about your job development. Next slide, Jolene. We're going to be teaching you 2 different paths for job development. And there's different reasons for taking the different paths. Sometimes you're going to take both paths, but you're going to take one of these 2 for customized employment. And the first path is informational interviews, and the second path is employer presentations. So right now, I want to remind you guys, you have probably in the student book, and then also it was sent out in the email, you should have the job development form. So since you've ended the discovery, and all that is through a different funding source, that paperwork, that plan has been completed. Now there is a new plan for your job development. So make sure you take a look at that, and you're going to see it's talking about informational interviews and employer presentations. And then also we have sent out, there you go, Margie's showing it right there on the screen. I've got mine at my desk over there. You also have 2 Truman examples. And the reason that we've done 2 Truman examples, we probably could have done 22 Truman examples of job development. The reality is that with customized employment, there should be a lot of possibilities generated. So we just wanted to show you a couple different ideas. One was written by Margie, one was written by me. So you see a little bit of variety in writing styles and that type of thing. We just wanted to expand your idea about what job development could look like. And Josh will be touching a little bit more in depth on some of that later on today. So just to reiterate, a whole new form for job development, and once again, a Truman example so that you kind of have an idea as to the type of information we're looking for. You can be bringing in descriptive writing again during as part of these informational interviews, especially when the job seeker is with you. So that's an ideal situation when you can bring in some of that descriptive writing again in this portion. Next slide. So here are these two paths. We're going to dive in deep to each path today. That's where we're going to spend most of the day on. Show of hands, has anybody done an informational interview or an employer presentation? Show of hands. I see some physical hands going up. Oh, yep, I'm seeing physical hands. All right, so we got some people with some experience here. I love customized job development, and I hate traditional job development. And in my opinion, traditional job development is looking for want ads, filling out applications, and going for interviews. And I know I've talked a lot about myself in this training. So most of you probably know I hate details. I hate filling out form fields. I hate that type of activity. I get a lot of no's. I get frustrated. I feel like I'm not making any progress. Customized employment, we don't do any of that at all. Customized employment is all about engaging with businesses and finding those environments where your job seekers can do tasks that'll benefit that employer and that their ideal conditions are present. You're going to see that we're talking less about interests today. If you have a job seeker that having their interest as part of their job is key for them engaging and going, that should now be an ideal condition. You should spell out that that interest has to be present in the job for them to be successful. Sometimes it's just a bonus, right? Just like all of us, if we connect with other people who have similar interests, we make those connections quicker. But a lot of us will be very successful in a job where we can do our task, where we can be successful, even if our interests aren't present. So just keep that in mind. And that's how I generally look at it. I work with a lot of people who they have to have a particular interest at that job for them to get up and go every day. It's a motivator. So make sure you know that by this time. So let's talk about informational interviews first. Informational interviews are pretty much where you go into the business and you learn about that business. That's really what you're doing during an informational interview. So I like to use informational interviews if I've never been inside that environment before, because how am I going to know if my job seeker's ideal conditions are present if I've never been in that environment, right? I also might not know what tasks are done in that environment. An example is I did an informational interview once at the DNR, and I had a very clear concept of what I thought the tasks at the DNR was, but wow, they just totally changed my mind when I actually got to go in and see what they did. So a lot of it is really being able to get in that environment and really see what's going on there. Another element is your job seeker has never been in that environment. I work with people who have a lot of anxiety around new environments. And if they were going to go and do a traditional interview at a business they've never been at, that anxiety level is going to be a 9 or a 10. And their best isn't going to come out. So this is a low stress way to just go check out things. You're not asking for a job ever, ever, ever during an informational interview, and that takes the pressure off. You're going to learn about those business needs, and we're going to talk a little bit more about all sorts of questions you can ask to get to that core. But beyond just asking, you're going to want to observe. So just like when we're discovering with the individual, with the job seeker, we kind of use those open-ended questions, those observations when we're learning about an employer also. So I might ask, what tasks just never seem to be able to get completed? But I also might look, right? And if they have big old piles of filing or shredding, even though they didn't bring that up as something that never gets done, I might make a note of it, looking that there's a backlog of tasks to be done. You're going to start that connection. A lot of times, a good fit for somebody is that the coworkers or the work culture is the right type of fit. How does the supervisor react when something goes wrong? Are they calm? Do they yell? Right? Can that be a deal breaker for the people we work with? How a supervisor is going to respond to a situation? It can be a big part of success. So it allows you to really observe that. Typically, you're going to bring the job seeker to these informational interviews. Sometimes I might scope out an environment a little bit, get a little bit of a feel, and then set up to come back with my job seeker. During COVID, you're probably not going to just be popping in. You're probably going to have to call ahead and see if it's something that you can do. And Josh is going to be diving a little bit deeper into some of the ways we need to tweak this during COVID. And once again, you need to verify those ideal conditions. If you work with somebody and they need to be in a neat and organized environment, or else they're not going to be able to focus on their tasks, well, that's something that you're going to be able to verify during an informational interview. So that's one path. We're going to go even more in depth on that today. The other path is the employer presentation. This is really where you go in and you teach an employer what customized employment is. That's really what you're doing here. You might get a tour as part of an employer presentation, but a lot of times you'll just be going in and presenting a PowerPoint. And once again, we're going to be going in, we're going to deep into the employer presentation today. We'll show you a couple examples. But I like to do an employer presentation. If I already know that environment, I don't need to go in and observe. I already know that my job seeker has the skills to complete tasks, and I already know their ideal conditions are present. I might start out with an employer presentation. A lot of times with large corporations with human resources department, this is the only way you're going to be able to talk to them about customized employment. You're going to have to go in and do a presentation. It presents that concept of CE to the business, starts to get their mind wrapped around what we're trying to do, and is a good way to start that conversation. Most of the time, you're going to do this without your job seeker. I have come across some job seekers in my time that are natural born salesmen, that their skill is presenting. I think in one of the small groups, we talked about somebody maybe who liked knitting and maybe wanted to be a teacher. So if your job seeker maybe has some skills, you might consider it. You would have to practice beforehand, but most of the time you're not going to have a job seeker present. And of course, the employer presentation is one that fits best to be done virtually and remotely during this time in COVID. So we'll dive more into that when we go down. Sometimes you're going to do both, guys. Sometimes you're going to go in, you're going to do an informational interview. You're going to be talking to the manager. The manager's going to say, wow, this sounds like it might really work well for our business, but I'm not the one who makes that decision. I need you to talk to my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss, right? This is when you would use an employer presentation for that situation. So sometimes you're going to use both. Sometimes you're going to go in and do the employer presentation and you're going to get a nibble. They're going to say, yeah, this might be a good fit. And you might then set up an informational interview with your job seeker so they can come and see the environment. So as you guys can see, these two can interplay together. They also can be both standalones. Outside of the COVID time, I'm going to tell you, I'm an informational interviewer. That is the way I work. I'm a casual person. My area, I'm in a rural area. And so I work with a lot of businesses that just have an owner and an employee. They don't like fancy presentations. That's actually would be more of a turn off if I wanted to sit down and have a formal presentation. What they want is an interaction. And then if they kind of like me and like what I'm saying, then we're going to dive deeper into it. So you really have to find out what your comfort level is. A lot of people like the employer presentation because it's really structured. So if you feel really nervous when you talk to employers, you want a script to work with, you're probably going to like the employer presentation. If you're someone like me who wants to be casual, wants to just talk off the cuff, then you might like informational interviews better. But if I come across a big corporation, I'm just going to have to suck it up and do an employer presentation because that's what it takes to get through those. Do I use any visuals? I got a question in the chat box. Do I use any visuals? I always have my visual resume with me during an informational interview in case the conversation comes up. So a lot of times in an informational interview, they'll be like, I love what you're saying. Do you have anybody that you think could benefit my business? And I'll be like, oh, yes, sir, I do. Or yes, ma'am, I do. Let me run out to my car and I can show you what I've done with this person and how I know that they have the skills to benefit your business, or how I know that they would be a good fit for your work culture. And then we could show them the visual resume. So that's really the only visual I use. The employer presentation is a whole PowerPoint, so that's full of visuals. But that's the only visual I use. Josh, do you use any visuals during your informational interviews other than a visual resume?
No, because I don't try to come, I don't come prepared with necessarily brochures. I'm always prepared to talk about my organization, but really with an informational interview, and I know you're going to dive into this a little bit, it's just taking that organic route to learn about them and make that connection between the job seeker and the business that we're targeting, right? And so again, I think the visual resume is that best resource because I don't want to redirect that conversation towards my organization or what I do, things like that. We're really obviously trying to just make that connection between the employer and the job seeker at that time.
I have seen, I think VR, Josh, don't you guys have that one nice like little handout that we've shown that shows customized employment a little bit and gives a couple scenarios? That might be something I'd bring along.
Yeah, we always will have a set, we always can be prepared, right? You can always be prepared to talk about that and have that. But for informational interviews, I just encourage people to be prepared, but not default to that, right? We're not going to be talking and saying, okay, well, I love to learn about your business. And then we get in front of the employer. And instead of making that connection between the employer and the job seeker, all of a sudden now I'm defaulting to my organization's one pager, And I think that's more of the employer presentation aspect of it is how do we present customized employment to a business? Margie, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I typically bring along a folder, and in that, I know as part of our resources and materials for today, I did send out a VRS business flyer that's just typically it's a piece of cardboard that's like, I want to say 9 by 6, and it has information about CE, and I believe that's what you're referring to, Lindsay. I might have that in my folder, but when I go on this informational interview, I'm really focusing on the employer, not trying to present something. I'm really trying to soak in and take in all the information about them. Now, in leaving that business, I might say, how do we follow up, or may I follow up with you? And I might bring that back at another time or set up an employer presentation if it seems like a good fit. But typically at this point, I'm really just trying to put the business at front and center, gather information about who they are and what they do. Sometimes I might not even have a job seeker that might fit that particular business, but I'm just really there to gather information and extend that arm as a contact, or to have that as a warm contact if I have someone in the future.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the way I approach a business for an informational interview is that I am coming to them because I want to learn more about their business. And that's 100% about what we talk about while we're there. I don't talk about job openings. I don't talk about job descriptions. I don't talk about if they're hiring. I don't talk about any of that. I just want to learn more about what they do. That's what I'm accomplishing in an informational interview. But you need to be prepared, because some of you guys learned on your themes testing. Themes testing can turn into a job offer on you. So you always want to be prepared. Next slide.
I actually think we're taking a 10-minute break here.
Oh, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, so we'll actually come back at 9:38 and get back to it. So enjoy your break, everyone. All right, everyone. You're not back yet, no worries. Step on in when you can. It's been 10 minutes, so I just want to be respectful of everyone else who's back. But we'll get things rolling again. So This is always what my co-trainers love to hear, but I'm going to slightly go off the beaten path real quick to make a connection here. So a little improv here. Hopefully it goes well. Before we do that though, I'll stick with this. We're gonna start off with a quick poll, a quick quiz. Hopefully you'll be able to see this on your screen. If not, the quiz, and you can mention this it's a true or false question. If you can't see the poll, please comment in the chat. True or false, customized job development always starts with an internet search for a job posting in the job seekers community. We'll give everyone a few seconds to respond to that. Again, the question would be, customized job development always starts with an internet job search for postings in the job seekers community, true or false? 100%. That was somewhat of a softball lob, right? False. As we know about customized employment, we're not doing our traditional job development. And I know, as we did a quick poll earlier, that many of you have not had that experience. So here's where I'm going to improvise. So stick with me for 1 second. So we're going to actually have you call an employer right now and make a connection with them. Yeah, that's everyone. How does that make you feel? And how did that one statement, we're not actually going to make you make a phone call, but how did that one statement, if you were going to have to make that phone call, how did that make you feel? Write that in the chat here.
We have so much anxiety, confident, put on the spot, anxious, excited.
I'm glad I took my blood pressure reading before class.
Is ready for rejection again. Chris, I always make the joke, high school prepared me for job development. I was rejected plenty of times, so. Awesome. Well, I love that feeling. It's either going to be a little excitement, a little anxiety, a combination of both, right? You know what else that I relate this to is dating. So we've all had dates before, right? In the chat, who's had a good date before? You've had a good date, just say, yes, I have. Yeah, there you go. On occasion, I'm married. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm married as well. But we've all had that first date. What in the chat, what are those feelings? What do we want out of a first date? What do we look for in a first date? Connection, warm fuzzies, common bonds. Is this worth pursuing? Some kind of positive connection. What do we have in a bad date? This date is no good. Conflict. Not a good match. Fear. Lots of red flags. No connection. Nothing to talk about. No shared interests. No empathy. Right? Rude. Always victim behavior. So one of the big things is there's a lot of parallels between dating and job development. I think one thing that I always look for in a date, and I'm a happily married man, so off the market here, so just saying in past experiences, to clarify if my wife ever sees this video, is that, I'm always looking for somebody to take an interest in me. Would you agree with that? That's a pretty good indicator. And a bad date may look like if somebody just talked about themselves for 2 hours, that probably wouldn't be the best experience, right? Same thing applies to job development and business engagement, okay? You're going to have these same anxieties. But if you go and talk about and focus on the business themselves, that's the spirit of the informational interview, and focus on the business, they're going to be reciprocated and feel those warm fuzzies. They're going to feel that empathy. You're going to make that connection with them. If you go in as a salesperson and you go in representing your business and you go in and just talking about yourself and everything you can do, that's really not the best approach. And that's not the best way to make that connection. So thanks for that improv exercise, but I think there's a lot of relation there, the things that we can draw upon our own experiences already. And it's just like dating, the more we do this, the better we get at it. And one of the biggest things that I just want to share really quickly is kind of a basic principle for anyone is, this is job development and business engagement is about frequency, okay? How often are we connecting, trying to make that connection with a business? And that's something that we can be doing every single day. And just put in the context of your own job searches in the past, if we were unemployed and we were contacting one business a month, would we be okay with that? And would we expect results? Probably not. Let's say it's one business a week. That's getting a lot better. We hope our chances go up. Now let's talk about what if it was one business per day. Now we're talking 30 businesses at the end of the month. And so that's just painting the picture right there for you, right? You have to start somewhere. You're going to be nervous about it. You're going to feel that anxiety. But if you set those little goals for yourself just to make that connection with a new business, soon you're going to have a whole network of businesses to be working with. Okay. You're going to get to know that community. Anyways, back on track here, everyone. Thanks again for entertaining me on that quick tangent there. So how have business needs changed in your area? And this is a big topic. Before we dive into a little bit more about informational interviews and employer presentations and how to connect, I think it's fair to acknowledge the kind of elephant in the room is how do we connect with businesses? Things are changing. And I think that's just kind of be directing the conversation to a little bit more of those specifics. Instead of saying, okay, we know it's difficult, we know that it's not a normal approach, but we shouldn't be saying it's impossible to connect with businesses. We should be asking ourselves, how do we make those connections? And some of it may be some common practices that we're already doing. You know, it may be calling ahead since we're not in that in-person meeting. We can't just stop by a business, but we have to think about that business, that industry. When would be good times to connect with them? When are bad times to connect with businesses? Who should we try to be connecting with? But ultimately, we may want to, as Lindsay said, do virtual interviews. A new thing, you know, that's going to be very common. I know that some businesses are still okay doing in person, but even as providers or as we've talked about, your own protocol, personal or organizations, may prevent you from going into a live interview. So always suggesting a virtual one is always a possibility. Many employers are very flexible on that at this time. The job shadows are a little bit more tricky just because of the virtual technologies. Not to say that a lot aren't willing to do that. Actually, some businesses are kind of making it a little bit more standard. They're getting more requests for that. So they're coming up with kind of more of a presentation on their own to describe some of those jobs, things of that nature. Really, we of course find a lot of businesses, a lot of people are either going to be perhaps working from home, but some people are still going to the office. So I think that's going to be different ways to connect as well. You know, if they're at home, they may not be able to give you all of the details and things that they typically be in their office environment. At the same time, they may have a little bit more flexibility in their schedule, right? And I think the big thing is, how do we recognize what new tasks, policies, and products or services, how is the industry changing, right? How are those businesses changing due to COVID-19, and how are they adjusting? So I think that's a great segue to the next slide here. And really, let's open this up for a conversation. So what businesses have been impacted in your area that you think about negatively in your community that you may visit or that you have connections with? Name some businesses that have been impacted negatively. I think the one big one is a restaurant industry, right? Gyms. Hospitality, tourism, definitely restaurants. Chain restaurant, People's Cafe, hotels, movie theaters. A lot of hospitality, some retail. Health industries. And I think the big one, of course, how things change. A lot of people may not be able to interact or go to those things. But let's think of, and that's the obvious one, but not being able to go into a business is obviously stifling a lot of businesses. But what are how have some of the other businesses changed to adapt? Let's talk about that. Many are working from home. You know, I see a lot of businesses out there, maybe they were, especially when the pandemic first hit, they were able to change the product a little bit and start making masks and start making protective gear, start making sanitation. They started finding ways to connect to businesses. A lot of places offering delivery. I love that, Dana. Adding cleaning sanitation positions. Right, exactly, a big one. Exactly. There's a lot more to-go orders, right? Or takeout, or that's in the restaurant industry, but even there's a huge uptick. It was at the right time with kind of that online shopping and grocery shopping in terms of the Target or Walmart or wherever the companies that do that, a lot more of that as well. Right. So, as much as we focus on businesses changing and we know that there's those natural barriers because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I think there's also the lens that we need to take is how have they been changing and adapting and how do we connect to that, right? And once we're aware of that, that's going to give us those openings to have those conversations and refine our approach to identify those businesses and to connect with them. So I think that's just a lot about taking a really deeper dive in your own community and then also, of course, your job seekers community. How are these businesses changing? What are the ones I should be connecting with? Another quick thing I want to just really quickly talk about is the holidays. Obviously, it's a very busy season. There are some businesses that are willing to meet with us. I wouldn't suggest going in and talking to, a retail right now, a Best Buy about a position. It's probably not the best opportunity to find a job. But you can also be setting yourself up to have those conversations after the holidays, right? You can be talking about, and one of the big things that I had this conversation in our community of practice, a different group, which was, asking a business. This is the conversation starter. How has COVID-19 impacted your business and what are your goals in 2019? Simple as that. That's a great opening for any business engagement. And I think a lot of people would be open to having that dialogue, right? And so again, I think it's trying to identify those unmet business needs. And a part of that is identifying how they've changed due to COVID-19. So that's the segue right there. All right, if you change the slide, please. All right, real quickly here, we just want to talk about the COVID precautions as well. Certainly that's a big issue. I know that we've talked about that a little bit already, whether it's your personal protocol that you have for yourself and your family, whether it's your agency's protocol, but we also have to be aware that, of course, businesses, of course, that have adapted to be open and be able to serve their customers, how they have been taking those precautions. And so I think a large part about that as we're approaching businesses, acknowledging a lot of that, right? And if we can already say we're doing those things or how that person, that the job seeker that we're connecting with already knows about those and can comply with those needs, goes a long ways. And so just be prepared to have that conversation. Recognize that you are again going to have your own and your agency's perspective or precautions around that, but also you have to identify and really meet the business at where they're at. And that's really, so just be prepared to have that conversation. And check with your organization too. Have that conversation. If your agency is doing something and promoting in person right now, and you don't feel comfortable, have those conversations one-on-one with your employer. All right. We'll jump to the next slide, please. And I think the big thing is, as we talked about, is going to be. We've shown this slide before here. But it kind of shows the hidden job opportunities versus the open market, the things that we've traditionally, how we traditionally find a job, right? Newspaper ads, Indeed, Craigslist, those help wanted signs. Those are the things that we naturally gravitate towards doing regular placement. Again, the key to customized employment, I think this is a good place to actually make this differentiation again. What's the difference between placement versus job carving versus customized employment? And the answer to that is, of course, placement is just finding any opportunity and trying to fit that person into that job right there. For a lot of people, as we know, that just doesn't work for long-term success. Job carving is when you maybe have a job description there and you say, hey, my job seeker can maybe do 8 out of those 10 or 15 requirements. So I'm going to try to carve those pieces out and see if we're going to hire that person on to do those specific tasks. Now, the thing with job carving is that it can be very limiting when you do that. That's just talking about that one position, that one need, when they could have tons of other needs. And I think that's what we're going to talk about more with the employer presentation. But that's the difference between customized employment. We're going in there, we're not following up on that job description. We're not taking a job description and trying to modify it. We're saying, what isn't getting done? What are your unmet needs? How has your business changed? We're trying to develop and cultivate a richer conversation. And again, that just starts by taking an interest in that actual business. And so again, I think that when you actually take this approach, you're going to find, I think that's where this diagram is fantastic. You're going to see a lot more job opportunities come in. And so relate that to our own jobs right now. what's not getting done, everyone? In the chat, throw in some things that, what's not getting done in your job right now? You can be your job position specifically, agency, department, whatever it is. Filing. Tim, I see you smiling, so you got to have something good, man. Think of your agency or position. What's not getting done right now that needs to get done? Nothing? Everything is just picture perfect in your organization. Money's rolling in hand over fist. People are going to work. Jobs are secure. Might as well bust out the Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville and start celebrating. Shredding, staff meetings, consistent cleaning. What are some of those other things that just aren't getting done right now? More inconsistent contact with existing employment partners who are on hold due to COVID-19. Students engaging in as many work experiences. Exactly. So as we're talking about this, we're trying to get people to have that conversation. Job shadowing, what's not getting done. Now that's how we try to take what they're saying and relate it back to them, right? This is how we open up that door. And again, you're going to find so many more opportunities when you just went in for that one position, one courtesy help. And when we expand on that, and all of a sudden there's 25 other things that aren't getting done. But that's what you have to do, is you have to paint that picture and facilitate that conversation with the employer. Again, the key to that is smooth listening, where they're doing the talking and you're listening. So yeah, just how do we get to know the business? You know, I think for me, one of the key aspects of this too is focusing on small to medium-sized businesses. Of course, there's big businesses out there that have really turned the corner in the last couple of years and really promoted inclusive employment for all, really trying to diversify their workforce, coming up with creative positions or new protocols for the business, things of that nature. But I always have the most success and the best response from small to medium-sized businesses. And I'll tell you why. Because I can actually talk to the decision makers, we can actually make those personal connections, we can actually find out a contact to pursue, and we can actually develop a relationship, and it's much easier to get to a decision maker as well. So just a little bit of thought on that as you're approaching different businesses. And even if you're going out shopping, well, we'll talk about that in a moment here. So actually, if you'd switch the slide, please. Oops, give me one moment, apologize. So yeah, again, the small businesses, no HR department is one of the best things. Not that HR are bad, but it's just policy. Again, a lot of businesses have turned over a new leaf, so to speak, and really adopted an inclusive hiring process. When you don't talk to an HR, you can really talk to the people, again, who make those decisions, will have those candid conversations with you. And quite frankly, because they are smaller, they don't have as many resources. They have more things that need to get done, right? Simply put, if you're a smaller operation and you're still trying to grow and succeed, chances are that you're doing more with less. So I think one of the biggest things is, of course, we're talking about those unmet needs, but when we're able to have those real local conversations, that's where the magic happens. That's where you're going to get the most responses. So can somebody tell me about their maybe experience with a big box store that hasn't gone well? Anybody have an experience trying to work with a larger company that just hasn't gone as well as you hoped it would?
I have, I mean, in my past experience, because I'm a work coordinator for school districts. And
Yeah.
so I'm always going into different businesses. And the one that I found that was really frustrating, and they've kind of gone a little bit out of business in our area, but Shopko would not ever allow me to do anything. Corporate would always shut us down and say, nope, you can't do anything with us. You can't be a part of it. We'll hire the person. Sometimes the people would even have a job, but I wasn't allowed to check in. I wasn't allowed to ask questions. I wasn't allowed to do any kind of the programming that I normally do to give students credit for working.
And I think there's always, there's always a potential way to collaborate or negotiate. Thank you so much for sharing, Kelsey. But the thing with that situation is, which is very common, is we're trying to fit into their mold, right? Even if they're willing to let us in, what's that angle? What's that approach? How do we fit into their mold? And then can somebody tell me maybe about an experience they've had with a small business that's been successful? Anyone have any interactions with a small business? Here's a better example. I know many people may have not had an experience doing job development. How many people go to like farmers markets or craft fairs or anything like that in the community? Give me a quick raise of hands if you've ever gone to anything, flea market, things like that. What's that response? What's that interaction like with when you go up to those vendors? Is it different than when in a big box store? For me, I always, when I go there, the best thing is usually when they're a small business, they're really focused on their passion, right? So it's easy for me to make that connection. If you're selling pickles, man, this is awesome pickles. I love these spicy pickles. Tell me about how your brining process and your canning process, whatever it may be. Where do you get your dill from? Oh my goodness, do you grow your cucumbers? I'm just making stuff up, but in terms of that interaction, but it's easier to make that connection, especially when they're already promoting what they do and what they're passionate about, right? That's how we make those connections. And so that's what I love about that small business aspect is, especially when you start getting at artisans, you're really talking about some different needs and making those connections. Even if it's a soft entry, maybe there's not an opportunity with that business, but maybe that's an opening to a network of people, right? To other vendors, to other people. So just something to think about. Yeah, there's love and passion behind the product, exactly. And I think that's what we're trying. It's stuff that we can stuff in front of us is already there to make an easy connection with, right? So again, there's going to be plenty of businesses that are larger that we approach that may make sense that we target because of the information we gathered in discovery, where it meets that person's skills, interests, and ideal conditions. But for me, I know the default is a lot of time going to those bigger box places. I relate this to fishing. If I am going to go fishing, I want to fish on a lake that has 1 or 2 people on it, not a lake that has 50 people on it, right? The chances are I'm going to have a better chance of catching that fish, securing a job, making a relationship. And so for me, again, small business, medium business is awesome. Big business is still awesome, but really try to focus on those ones that you can make those connections with.
Hey, Josh, this is Christine. When I said the love and passion, what I wanted to say too is if you're thinking small vendors, there's going to be love and passion, but if they may not have a certain thing because they're such a small mom and pop, they're usually great at networking because they're working with other small businesses that may have more potential. And I say that as an example because I've had the opportunity to work with a local sticker company or a local photography company. And they may have more opportunities than I have, but there's little webs of connections that don't just think they might not have an opportunity, but if you ask well, is there anyone you know, that can open a whole nother can of worms that you didn't even know existed. So if they say no, don't try to assume that you got defeated or like your date is over, because they usually have something in their back pocket because their connection and network, because of their passion and love, can shine through further. So thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to interject that.
No, perfect, Christine. Thank you so much. And I think that's a huge thing is how do you just connect? You make that connection and they can potentially connect you to others. One key thing, and you hear that we probably said this before, it relates to the dating though. Hey, we're having a great first date, right? We're interacting, I'm learning all about you. I'm taking an interest. Don't ruin it by asking them to marry you on the first date. Okay. So there is no, are you hiring? And what's that look like? And things like that. That's not the point of it, right? Point is make that first connection so you can just have that casual conversation, network, really learn, get more information, because when you have more information, you can follow up on it as well. So, all right, next slide, please.
Hey, Josh, did you address in the chat, somebody asked if anybody had success with LinkedIn? Did we talk about that?
So I have had some success with LinkedIn in terms of individuals. It really depends on the individual, right? I think that's one thing that you can always be doing for your individual. We can always start building the network. I think the thing that's a little daunting for some, or they say, well, I don't have much to put on there right now. They may not have any work experience or things like that, but it really can benefit them, but still start connecting them to other professionals they may know. You know, I think that's the beauty of kind of LinkedIn is be the professional you want to be. I encourage that for all of us and for the job seekers we work with, right? So you may be their counselor as a professional relationship. On LinkedIn, people don't know that. You can just be a professional that's connected to them, right? I think that's a great way that personal relationships can turn into professional connections in some capacities, as long as the other person's willing to, obviously accept the invite to network. But let's say it's that pastor, let's say it's that person from their neighborhood, let's say it's that coach or whatever it may be. Well, that's their personal relationship. Do they have a professional relationship or profession now they can get connected to with LinkedIn? So we can always be building that. I guess one quick story in terms of customized employment. We actually found a gentleman a job who he was always employed. He had a lot of front end jobs and things like that. We did discovery because he wanted something more. He really wanted something a little bit different. His passion was baking, and he actually got a job. We customized a job as a baker. He learned the trade, doing a wide variety of different things. Unfortunately, that shop went down about 3 years into it due to some things. And what was cool was the employer actually helped the gentleman start his own LinkedIn page and then connected his professional network of bakers to him. And with his recommendations and that networking, he was actually able to secure a job within about 3 or 4 weeks. And so, again, it doesn't have to be the ritzy, glitzy, glamorous ones that we see that are, but it can, where are the basics? How do we just make this look polished as possible, even if it is very basic, whether it's a headshot and a couple quick things about the person. It doesn't have to be super magical and all the different bells and whistles to make it look, super up to date and with the times and things, can be that basic resource is what I'm trying to say. So did you have any comments on that, Lindsay?
I have not used LinkedIn. I have been getting quarterly naggings from my manager because I'm supposed to be setting up my account. But I really think in the rural area that I am in, my best option is to make connections with the local businesses. I used to do job development down in the Twin Cities, and I did do more of the professional networking. This was 20 years ago, so not LinkedIn. But it was a way to interact with businesses and get those doors opened. So you really just have to understand where you're at, what businesses you're looking at. And the great thing about customized employment is tomorrow I could be working with a job seeker in a very specific niche where I would have to access LinkedIn more. And that's the great thing about customized employment is we do what's necessary for the individual and the field that they're working in. So if I went on an informational interview and I asked questions about how do you network within this industry, and they said LinkedIn is how you do it, well, then I'm going to be given LinkedIn a lot more of my time than I currently do. I do think that the question was more specifically like us as human service professionals, if we had a page, if that would help businesses open up to them. And I know that Josh does more cold calling and emailing than I personally do. I am somebody who just, when it's not COVID time, I just go right in and I just start a conversation. That's what works naturally for me. I have a hard time maintaining my emails as it is. I want to get out of the office and out into the real world. So that's what fuels me. And, we talk a lot about customized employment for the job seeker, but once you know it, you start incorporating it into your own life. And so that's just more of a reflection of how I like to operate than what's successful.
Sure.
And that's other people are saying similar things here on the chat.
2 quick things about LinkedIn. I think when it comes professionally, and connecting, I think it's an easy way to find someone in a company, a specific contact, and make a soft opening by connecting on LinkedIn. As from me as a employment specialist, customized employment specialist, to someone in a company, it's a great way to really learn about an individual and reach out without having to go through that front door, right? I think on the tail end of my comment about an individual job seeker having a LinkedIn page, one thing that I always encourage is we want to build that social capital for them and continue growing it. And because that's going to be something that's going to be invaluable through their job search. It's invaluable through our job searches, and it certainly is invaluable through their job searches from now until forever, right? And so one of the big things is that you can have a forum already existing, a platform where, again, whether it's an old counselor, an old coach, an old acquaintance, that's how you can stay connected and truly build social capital on behalf of that individual as well. So.
Okay, so we are going to try a large group here, guys. This works so much better when we're in person. So we're going to try to adapt it to the virtual here. So what we want you to do is just use the chat and just briefly explain if you have a scenario that fits these questions, and then we will call on you to extrapolate. So you don't have to type the whole story. You can just give kind of a general outline. Margie is going to be looking at the chat, and she will be calling on people to share their stories. But what we want to do is we want to start getting you to think outside of those job descriptions, outside of those boxes that companies try to put us in. And we always find that real life examples is one of the best ways we learn. So I'm going to read through these multiple different scenarios. And if you have an example, please put it into the chat. So the first one is, have you had a job that had no job description? So type in the chat if you've ever had that experience. Have you ever had an interest turn into a paid opportunity? So if you've ever had a skill or a passion that you were doing as a hobby and somebody ended up offering to pay you for it, what was that? If you'd be willing to share with the group. Josh is raising his hand.
If you answer yes, also write real quickly a brief description of what that was.
Yeah, we'll
I
call
see
on you
Chris-
to extrapolate.
I see Christina said yes to not having a job description.
All right. You want to share the story?
All right. I am not someone that dresses up. So everyone that knows me, I'm not a dress up person. And this is the first job that I didn't have a job description. I walked in because in high school, I was helping out a girlfriend of mine. She wanted a brutally honest friend to come with her to figure out her prom dress. So I go in and I'm like, nope, not this one, not this one. And I'm helping because they're saturated with people. And so I'm pulling dresses in and out. And, you know, they saw me do this and I wasn't at the year yet where I could go to prom. But the owner goes, gosh, do you like doing this? I said, well, yeah, you had to be honest, but you had to be politely honest because you could offend people. So he goes, well, do you have a job? I said, I had to help my dad on the farm. He goes, well, how about you bring out your girly side and start tomorrow? And I didn't know what that meant. I was like, sure, what do I need to do? And he goes, the only requirement is nylons. Oh my gosh, I knew I would never have a job with nylons again. But I will say, I learned so much, not just about prom, but about quinceañeras, weddings, gowns. And my favorite was working with the gentleman, whether it be a wedding or prom, because all they had to do was bring in a swatch of a color and say, fit me up and get me the right color. So I will say when I was 15, 16, that was one of my first jobs that I didn't have a job description, but I learned so much. I wish I still had the arms of steel to carry like 5 to 10 dresses. But you work with so many different people and it's an experience I'll never forget. But it was a small one and I will never work in a shoe store either because you have to organize all that stuff, but it's great numbers. So one of my favorites, and it was a lasting impact because people still in the small community remember me. Oh, you're the prom lady. I'm like, no, I'm not the prom lady, but that's okay.
This is also, your story is a great example of having the skills without necessarily the interest, but it's still being a good fit and you still being a good asset to that business because you had that skill of being able to be honest, but being polite, like being able to deliver it in a way that people could accept the feedback and focus on the positive. So that's a really interesting example.
Well, and Lindsay, I will say, I might have not had the interest of dressing up, but I learned so much in that. And I had the interest of working with people and connecting. And when you get to see that smile on their face or that aha moment, because the guys found the right thing and you got to take a picture of them in the right thing. So then they're making their lady friends or their partners all happy, or, you know, like when it was that aha moment because you were getting the self-fulfillment of other people being happy. So sometimes
Fantastic.
it's going outside the box that way.
Absolutely. Margie, what's next?
Oh my gosh, we have a lot coming in. So Kelsey said yes, Shane said yes. Dan said he did riding fly fishing. Leslie said kind of created a position, a CNA helper. And Elena actually wrote a proposal to help a manager with the training piece, training that policy and procedure. So really developed a job that didn't exist, which is kind of cool. So I don't know if you want to pick a couple or we have a lot.
Let's start with Elena's here. So I'm just reading it really quick. You were doing work for a store manager that he hated. Oh, I understand. I understand hating some of the tasks of a manager position. So it worked out well. I wrote a proposal. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about how you went about this?
Hi everyone, this is Alana. I guess I don't know what else you want to know. I was doing work for the store manager that he just kept kind of passing me on the side, and then he made it into an official position at that store.
So he was delegating you the tasks he didn't want to do?
Correct.
Ah,
I mean,
okay.
I volunteered for them. I mean, it wasn't that he was just passing the buck. I actually had an interest in them. So he showed me how to do some things, and I had already been doing some of them on my own anyway, as sort of in an assistant manager position. But I was attending classes in college, and I had a child, an infant. So creating a position was the best solution for all of us because I didn't have the time to be able to devote to being an assistant manager or a store manager.
So what we find a lot of times when we try to customize a job, which is what you did here, well, I guess they were already tasks that needed to do, so maybe it was a little bit of job carving, is how did you get the approval when there was, it was just added expense? There was no added revenue here. How did you sell it? What was the selling point as to why the owners went for it, do you think?
It allowed, so for this company, they had 3 stores and a fuel oil delivery business. It allowed the managers at each of their respective stores to focus more time on management duties, employee retention, hiring the appropriate candidates, because we at that time had a lot of turnover. So it really helped them be able to focus on doing management tasks and spending less time in the office. And that was one of the actual parts of my proposal was, hey, this will get your managers out on the floor. They can talk to the vendors, they can talk to customers, they can talk to the employees and really figure out what's going on out on the floor versus having employees kind of running the show with the manager hiding in the office the whole day.
Absolutely. So as an owner, you're looking at this and you're saying there's actually going to be savings here because to hire and train is a huge expense for businesses. And if they have a high turnover, they know that that's costing them a lot of money. And so a lot of times when you're working with a small employer, you're going to need to be able to explain to the employer how this is going to help their bottom line. And so you pointed out these certain tasks that the managers would be able to spend more time on that would create savings for the business. And a lot of times employers or owners are really interested in that bottom line. So you either have to find a way to generate more revenue or you need to find a way to reduce costs. That is generally how you sell a customized job. There are some other things we're going to talk about, such as increased customer satisfaction is another way to sell it. But we'll be talking about that on future slides.
So one of the other things that I did in that position too was to improve revenues, increase revenues, was I also added secret shopping to my tasks.
Yes.
So I would either go around the area to our competitors and price out certain specific like key items. One of which was fuel, which was pretty easy. All you have to do is drive by. And then also I looked at the cost projections on the invoices and spent more time delving into the actual items and how much each thing was costing and how much they need, and creating kind of a structure for what the markup needed to be for specific products.
Wonderful. Well, that's a perfect example. And this actually did kind of work out, big group, huh, guys? We did get some interaction here. I'm pleased. Thank you. We're going to cut it a little short because we're just a hair behind, but I did also see this logging one, and I am doing a logging. I've got a logging theme going on, so that did pique my interest. And my guy did get to go operate a skidder the other day, a couple weeks ago. So in the time of COVID, I did come up with that opportunity of a themes testing where they actually did get to get in the skidder. I like seeing that because I thought it was skidster, so I might have spelt that wrong on my plan, but thank you. Good examples. Next slide. So let's dig deep into the informational interviews. Informational interviews, what you're going to do is hopefully you've got your list of 10, maybe you got a list of 20, list of 30, list of 40. There's no end to how many lists you can do. But then you go along the bottom and you try to find companies that match both themes testing, both themes if possible, and you choose a couple. And in the non-COVID world, you would probably just go out and walk in their front door and see if you can start talking to them. That's actually the activity we would be doing today if we were in person. We would be shoving you out the door and you would all be going out to companies and you'd be seeing if you could get some information from them. It's one of our favorite days. Everybody's super nervous before they go out and they come out back all generated with a bunch of, all excited with a bunch of ideas. But you're going to come up with a couple of places to go and do themes testing. And you're going to need to do some planning. I like to research the industry a little bit. If I know somebody who works in the industry, I might call and talk to them a little bit before I go out. I might do some research on new trends happening in those industries, because a lot of times new trends is a way to customize a job. A small company might not be able to absorb those new trends yet, but they could see how that could help their bottom line. They can see their industry moving in that direction, and you might be able to propose a way that your job seeker could help them with that. You're going to need to do some prep work, especially if that job seeker is coming with you. The number one thing that you need to make sure your job seeker is on the same page with you on is that you are not going to look for a job today. You're not asking for a job. You're not interviewing for a job. All you guys are doing is going out and learning about that job. So when I went out with the logging, I had a bunch of ideas of questions that I had. And I just really reiterated to my job seeker, you know, this guy doesn't have a job open. We're not asking for a job. We're just really going out to learn more about logging. And it was great because both him and I had a ton of questions. We were with the guy for about 3 hours, and it was just ongoing back and forth, and it was super informational. We got to go to their site where they had all the equipment, and we got to go out into the field. If it was an informational interview versus a themes testing, I probably would have been more out in the field. I might have driven up to a logging situation and seen if there was anybody who could talk to me. I might call some loggers in the area and see if anybody would have time to teach me a little bit more about the industry. The key here is that you're emphasizing an informal relationship. So a lot of times I just say, I don't know anything about logging. I'm working with somebody who's really interested in that industry. Do you have any time where you could teach me a little bit about it, where I could ask you some questions about it? That's really what you're asking for in an informational interview. The amount of time is going to vary. I have done informational interviews, like I just said, that will last several hours, but most of the time it's going to be about 30 minutes if it's a pop-in. That's my personal experience. If I'm just popping into a site. And then if we have a great connection, I often will talk about, well, how could we follow up with this? How could I, is there anybody else I should talk to about this? You want to find out if you're talking to somebody who makes the decisions for the company. And if it's not that person, I still spend that time with that person. A lot of times I get great background information, and then I'm even more prepared when I get to talk to the decision maker for that business. We are going to be talking about, sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. During COVID, we don't recommend you swing in anywhere. Up here on the range, it is still appropriate. I actually have a coworker right now doing customized employment, and she is calling employers, but she told me 100% of their answer is just swing on by. Now, we're in a rural area. We have a different perspective on things sometimes up here on the range. So you need to have a good idea. You need to call and see beforehand. Some people want you to have taken your temperature before you go. Some people are going to want you to wear a face shield and a face mask. So you really want to be prepared before you go. Next slide. Now I'm on the right slide. So you just want to initiate that conversation. You're going to want to find the most casual, relaxed way to start a conversation. And the fun thing about customized employment is if you really get to do it a lot, you're going to be doing these informational interviews everywhere you go all the time. Kind of like Josh said, it's not necessarily that you have a specific job seeker all the time. It might just be, hey, I wonder what that company does, or how do they work? I'm just going to swing in. Or sometimes I'll naturally be a customer and I'll just ask questions. How do you like working here? How did you get into this job? Tell me more about this. This is my first place at your business. Can you tell me more about it? You're just going to kind of be planting these seeds all over the place. It becomes really, really natural. But you're going to want to find a way to make that really casual. You're not going to want to say, hi, I'm Lindsay Alexander. I'm a rehabilitation therapy supervisor for the state of Minnesota, and I help people find jobs. That's not what you're going to want to say, because what they're going to say to you is, oh, we don't have any jobs available. Thank you. Goodbye. Right? They don't know if they have a job available because I haven't got to get in there and see if there's something that their business isn't doing that could benefit them. So you really want to get in that door and start a casual conversation. If you're with your job seeker, I would say, I'm just going to say my job seeker's name is Andrew. Andrew's really interested in logging. Is there any time that you could meet with us and tell us more about your industry? We're both really interested in learning how your industry works. That's the type of thing that I say when I call. Once you get inside the business, this is going to be much harder to do virtually. This really is when you're in person. You're going to be wanting to look for those unmet needs. Are their bathrooms filthy, right? Is their promotional information outdated? I remember one in the Brainerd area, they were trying to think. I think they were like a repossession company, but when they got the tour, there was an entire room stuffed with shredding that hadn't gotten done, probably a decade's worth of shredding that had never been done. You'd be able to visually see that. So you want to be looking at that, but you're going to also want to be asking that question. What type of tasks never seem to get done on time? What keeps you up at night? What do you think would benefit your business if you just had another set of hands? Those type of questions. Next is new trends in the industry. That's the one I really like to research before I go out. Sometimes the owner doesn't even know about new trends because they've just been struggling to get done what they can get done every day. So they really can't keep a pulse on that. So sometimes you can bring that up. We tried to write in one of the Truman examples a way that a new trend can kind of come up on an informational interview. So take a look at that. We tried to include that. I love to find opportunities to increase revenue. That is the easiest sell in customized employment. If you can say to an owner, hey, my guy can do this and it's going to earn you more money. Wow, right? It's a simple equation. That is a very simple equation. So examples of this are things such as you're talking to a mechanic and you could add car detailing. So if somebody brings in their car for a repair, they could also choose to get it detailed at that time. It's just an added element that they can bill for, and it's convenient. Another idea is to increase customer satisfaction. So I don't know if you guys have gone somewhere where you like get a bottle of water, or there's like snacks out when you go, right? It can be really nice. It can be really fancy and make you feel like a very valued customer. You might go somewhere that doesn't have any of those perks, and you could promote that as a possibility. Sometimes we talk about those delousing clinics where they pick the lice out of your hair. Well, that takes a long time to pick lice out of hair. I've heard, I don't have any personal experience with lice, guys, but I've heard that it takes a long time. Well, what are the parents going to do while they're there? You know, maybe you have a coffee bar, maybe you have a wine bar, right? Maybe wine is needed if there's lice in the house. So what are some of those added elements that are going to make people want to come and stay at your business? I always think about the guys sometimes who go out shopping at like somewhere huge like IKEA, you know, some big place where they're just like trailing around their wife or girlfriend, and they really don't want to be there, and they're going to be there for hours. What could we do for those people? What could we do that would make them spend more money in that location, or just be content while they're there? Those are the type of things you're going to be wanting to look for. And then we also talk about business within a business. Josh is going to be telling you much more details about business within a business. But you're going to want to be looking for opportunities while you do informational interviews. So a standard question I might ask, and that I asked the logger when I met him, is what would you do? What type of equipment would you purchase if you had $25,000? You could say 10,000. You could say any amount. And then they'll tell you whatever they tell you. And then you might ask, what does it take to operate that piece of equipment? And sometimes it's, well, you need a commercial driver's license. That's the one I got from the logger, right? You need a commercial driver's license, and I expect you to have 10 years of experience operating that machinery. But sometimes they're going to tell you, well, you press a button and you wait 5 minutes, and then the product comes out, and then you press a button again. So it depends. But you're going to want to be asking those questions because it can create opportunities within that business. Once again, guys, I think we've beat this to death already, but get outside of job descriptions. If you're at a business and they say to you, everybody has to work the till, okay? Just let that float right past you, okay? Don't end the informational interview at that point. Keep going, because I've had that happen so many times, and then the company is willing to customize. You know, they're just thinking inside their box as it is. Once you present them with other ideas, they might be open to other possibilities. So sometimes a company will have that rule to screen people out. But keep working, see if there's a connection, see if there's something that you can find. Taking people with, you have to kind of decide. You have to know your individual, and at this point you really should. I will tell you, with the individuals that I primarily work with, they do not come with me for the first informational interview, because the population that I work with generally are with me because like private providers won't or can't work with them. They have really complex needs. So I have to go in that environment first and make sure, is there a candy jar out? Because if there's a candy jar out, my job seeker is going to fly over the desk and take all the candy out of the candy jar. Is that setting that person up for any success? No. So a lot of times I have to go in, but I do occasionally get to work with people like through VR who don't have those same needs, and I definitely bring them with. A lot of times, like when I went to that logging, met with that logging employer, my job seeker knew way more about logging than I did. And his questions were much more focused, and like the terminology was much more appropriate for the industry. So he will come with me for all informational interviews. He's more knowledgeable than I am about the industry he's interested in. So I'm never going to go without him. He's always going to come with me. I see a lot of stuff popping on the chat. Anything we need to address, Margie?
Bruce just mentioned putting in a plug for those BENS, those business engagement networks, which are established throughout Minnesota, and VRS has them, in different regions. So it sounds like that can be a really good business connection, or the way to share information with businesses and get information about different businesses that are part of that. So a good resource.
Margie, how do we find out about them?
I'm going to divert that to Bruce because he probably has more information. I'll get emails about them, but Bruce, how would people get in contact with their local group?
You know what I will do? I will share with you later this afternoon, Margie, and you can pass it on to the group, a list of each, with a map of each district and the contact person for the BENs. But I know our Northeastern Minnesota BEN is a great chance to make some of those initial contacts and get some of the ideas of, this might be a place I want to go do an informational interview or that type of thing. They're very informal. We're doing virtually right now, which is helpful in the fact that we've got a lot more businesses that are willing to pop in to a Zoom meeting rather than take time out of their day to drive to a coffee shop and their schedule. So it's been, at least for me, I've been able to get some great employers to visit with us. So I just always want to plug those because I think they are a good asset. So I will send you the map and the list of those, and you can send out to the group later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bruce. So
Perfect.
Go ahead.
I was going to say perfect. Yeah, Bruce, if you want to get that to me. And we did have another comment about the candy example with coffee and candy that's used with many SSB individuals, which also isn't listed on the deed website.
Perfect. The big thing that I really want you to take away from this is a real change in who your focus is. Your focus is not the job seeker right here. So if your job seeker is with you during an informational interview, you should not be talking about your job seeker a bunch here. You are not there to sell your job seeker. Okay? That is not what you're doing right now. You want to get this employer or small business owner to talk to you, to tell you about their business, to tell you about themselves. So a lot of times in job development, we feel like a salesman, right? In traditional job development, we're a salesman. We're trying to sell the company on our job seeker. Informational interviews, that's not what you're doing. You're trying to get the business to tell you about themselves so that you can see if your job seeker can benefit them, because that's what customized employment is all about. It's not about finding a sympathetic employer that's going to hire your person because they think it's the right thing to do. You want to find how that job seeker is going to benefit that business. And then you need to learn how to show the business that. So if you're doing an informational interview and you're talking a lot, you're on the wrong track. If you are doing an informational interview and the owner or the manager or the employee is talking a lot, then you are on the right track. Even if everything about the business means that it's not going to work for your job seeker, you're still learning about that industry. And I think on another page, we'll talk more about that. So next slide.
Let's actually take a break. We're right on the hour mark. We're a little bit past actually. So
Perfect.
Let's take a 10-minute break. My clock here says 10:36, so 10:46 we'll resume. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jolene.
Charlie. It is just. Jen, stop baiting Charlie.
Hey, Teresa, I just want to let you know that your mic is on, just in case.
Thanks.
No worries, just in case though.
Okay.
I have 10:46 on my clock. I think was our return time. Margie saying yes. Thank you for keeping me on those details, Margie. I appreciate it. Okay. If we're ready to get back at it, we're going to continue on talking about informational interviews. I don't see that Jolene's back, but I think she will be able to move our PowerPoint here in a bit when we're ready for it. So just to reiterate, we put it in all capitals here, guys, so you know it's important when it's in capitals. Informational interviews are not the time to ask for a job or ask the business to hire someone. You don't know enough information yet. You don't know if your individual is going to be a good fit for there yet. So make sure you don't do that. We do know that sometimes individuals, even though you've prepped them, that it's not that you're not going to ask for a job today, they still sometimes do. So be prepared for that. A lot of times I will just say, You're really excited to get in this industry, aren't you? Yeah, we're just gathering information today. And we'll talk more about it and we'll follow up. So I kind of work on that. Sometimes the person gives them a job application and we go about it that way. But we do like to have you make a note in your customized employment plan. It could be on the sensitive information page, because filling out applications and asking for applications is not part of customized employment. So sometimes I'll just write right there in the area that you write about your informational interview, I'll say, you know, Andrew requested an application. And so that anyone reviewing your customized employment would understand what happened at that. So that's how we kind of handle that. Now, I think somebody kind of alluded to this fact when we were talking about like farmers market vendors and that type of thing. You never know what their network is. And that's one of the biggest things that you can really do during an informational interview is really understand all the different businesses that feed into this one business. So I'm just going to take a convenience store, right? A convenience store doesn't make the Twinkies they're selling, right? They just sell the Twinkies. So how do they get those Twinkies? Where do the Twinkies come from, right? They work with distributors. So you're going to want to learn more about the distributors they work with. You might want to ask about if you're at a company, let's say you're at a natural, like medicinal, somebody who makes natural medicinal things, and she has beautiful labels and beautiful packaging. You might want to ask, hey, how did you get those labels? Did you create those labels? Did you work with a company who creates those labels? So you're going to want to ask about all the different businesses that feed into that. Sometimes you might ask, who cleans the rugs, right? Because a lot of times those companies, they have somebody who comes and picks up the rugs and then they drop off other rugs. Where do you get your ice from? You know, just on and on, all those questions. And a lot of times that is where you're going to actually end up customizing the job. So really learn about those different things that feed in. If you think that a distributor is a good match, or a marketing company who's making the labels could be a potential match for the theme of your individual, you would ask for what would you ask for? Put in the chat box. If you think their distributor or their marketer is somebody that you want to talk to next, what would you ask for at that informational interview? To follow up, you can put it in the chat, and Margie at the end of the slide will read some of those for us. And then how to follow up. So I approach everything during the informational interview as really relaxed. So at the end of it, I might say, you know, I'm just really interested in your company, all these things we learned about today. You know, is there somebody else that I could talk to? Could I talk to the owner? Or could I talk to the regional manager to learn more about your business? That might be then somebody who I'll contact about an employer presentation. So make sure that you kind of think about that follow-up. Sometimes you're going to go in for an informational interview and you'll be having a great connection, but a customer will walk in, right? And you'll have to stop it at that point so they can help that customer. If it's a gas station or something, you know that customer is going to take 5 minutes. You'll just wait for that customer to go. But if you're in an art gallery, they might be spending an hour with that customer. You're not going to wait around for that. So sometimes I'll just say, you seem really busy. I've really learned a lot talking to you today. Is there a time of the day you're less busy when I could swing back and learn more? So you kind of want to have that in your back pocket of how you will transition to that next meeting. A lot of times I'll just thank people for their time. I'll get a business card and then I will go back to my office and then I'll follow up with maybe a thank you email, or follow up with, hey, I've been thinking about your business and I was wondering, I have some thoughts about it, or you know, you saw something there that you think your individual could do for them. So you're going to want to think about how you transition for that follow up. But what I always look for is for it to be very organic, still casual. I'm still not asking for a job. I'm not asking for a position during this initial contact. So that is important to keep that relationship ongoing. I'm just taking a quick look at my notes to make sure I have everything here. So yeah, next slide. Oh, hold on, Margie. What did we get in the chat about what do you do if you think one of the network might be a good match?
Get some info about who to contact. Ask if you can have that contact information. Name drop and ask if you can, get that name, and then ask if you can share your name. Somebody thought name dropping was a great idea.
Looks like Josh has something to add.
Yeah, it's also don't be afraid just to ask them, what do you think is the best approach?
I always ask, is that person best contacted by email, phone, stopping by? Because everybody's different. If you're going to email me, might get lost in my emails, guys. I'm just going to let you know that. If you call me and it's around 7 in the morning, you're probably going to actually get to talk to me. If you call me and it's 2 in the afternoon, I am long gone. I have been out of work for about 2 hours by 2 in the afternoon. So it's always great to ask those questions. Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, we wanted to kind of segue into just a quick break to talk about other possibilities when it comes to customized employment and community integrated employment, which is the individual being an entrepreneur or creating a business within their business. And so it's really a really cool opportunity actually in my professional role with the state. I'm actually kind of transitioning. I'm still a customized employment specialist, but I'm also transitioning into a small business development specialist as well. That's a really cool option for people. We'll talk a little bit about the small business program, but as an entrepreneur, really for anyone to start being an entrepreneur, to start a successful business, they really have to have their interests, ideal conditions, and the skills all identified and having a business concept that they think they can generate income with. And it's really the next kind of frontier for customized employment, and something that we certainly hope to give you some examples of and encourage you to think about moving forward as you're working with a variety of job seekers. Does this fit in with maybe a path that they're taking? So just again, one more thing, item to add to the menu, so to speak, of services that were potential options for them to be employed. Business within a business and being an entrepreneur is a great option for that. I do want to reference a sheet that we have. If you do have your student book with you, we actually have a document that we called Micro Entrepreneur and Business Within a Business resource. And so I think we're going to bring that up on screen real quick here. 1 second. And this is just a quick reference sheet for you to talk about what a business within a business is. What is that? Well, it's a symbiotic relationship where that you both have the same target audience, and you're both have the same target goals in the same industry, but you don't have a competing product or service that's going to stifle each other. That it's both a mutually beneficial relationship that you both can combine resources, share resources, and promote each other's business. And we actually see a lot more businesses within a business than we actually think about or know about. For instance, who's ever been to Costco before? Raise your hand. Quite a few of us. Who do we see throughout the store? Whether it's, especially when you're leaving the store on the right-hand side, who do we always see? Somebody want to unmute or throw it into the chat. Yeah, we see food samplers. I've seen piano players are promoting different pianos, companies, vendors, right? People selling memberships. I see people selling water softeners. I see people selling other tiles and things like that. We see a lot of little vendors in there with the sales representative trying to catch people on the way out, promote their services, whether it's siding or new water softener or piano. So we automatically see some people starting businesses within a business. Have you ever been in a department store? Let's say it's Macy's, just using them as a random example. But when we walk in a department store, I've walked in the kind of the health and beauty with my wife before. They have specific reps, right, from different companies. Have you ever seen that before? I'm just using this again as an example. They may be selling retail, clothing, all these jewelries, different things, but they may have a representative there from Sephora or another small business that's trying to sell their own product. I think a better example of this is actually Margie and I have a friend in the field that she's an employment specialist. She has her own business, Minnesota Customized Employment, but she's also known as, and she moonlights as her other profession, Biscotti Barb. She makes biscotti. And so she actually goes to different fairs and different places all over the Twin Cities to promote her businesses. But she actually got connected with one of her fellow vendors who sells coffee. And they actually started promoting each other's businesses while they went to different fairs, right? Hey, biscotti kind of goes with coffee. Coffee goes with biscotti. Why should we both be there? It seems like it's a really good opportunity where we can cover more ground and reach more customers who are the same customers. So would you be willing to, if I gave you some supply of mine, would you promote that and sell that if you did the same for me? And that was an example of that symbiotic relationship right there. So it's a really good opportunity to think about that for the people we're supporting. If they really have a strong interest, if they've already talked about starting a small business. Here's quick examples of a business within a business for customized employment. A colleague in the field up north had a individual who started a business within a business at a local bait shop. And the bait shop sold all sorts of lures and of course bait and things of that nature, things that you would commonly associate with fishing. But they didn't have any fish cleaners there. And so this young man who had been fishing his whole life knew how to love fishing, wanted to do that, and had the experience cleaning fish very quickly. Had plenty of practice doing that growing up. Ended up securing a job at this place, started a business of his own, where he was kind of an offshoot where he would come and clean people's fish as they caught him for this local bait shop. Okay, I worked for another quick example. I worked for a comic book store, I worked with a comic book store in the area. And there's a gentleman who actually started a business within a business because he actually bought this case, kind of a trophy case, where he would sell old school Nintendo games from back in the day, the original Super NES. And so he had kind of these vintage games and systems and stuff. And he didn't, as an entrepreneur, didn't want to have to deal with the overhead, the space, the things like that. And so he was able to negotiate a small corner of this comic book shop where it just added more flavor, more options for them to come in, for other customers. Another reason for other customers to come in to that shop was also to buy these games. And so it was negotiated out. Hey, can you take a little bit after each sale to pay for this little area? It's also going to generate more business because they're going to, other people who have this interest, they're come to your shop and see other products that you have as well. So again, it's a great option. The business within a business resource, again, is in your handbook. It doesn't look like we're able to get that up, but I think we also sent that out in the previous email. Is that correct? All right. We'll give you some examples there, and it also talks a little bit about a micro entrepreneur, and that's actually a really good segue to switch the slide here and talk about a small business. Give me one moment here, just getting to my notes. And so one of the big things that we want to talk about is the couple different options for a small business. As I talked about, Vocational Rehabilitation Services actually has a small business program that can be eligible for individuals who are currently being served by VRS. Well, I'll dive into that in a second here. I actually have slides on that, I apologize. We also have a plan to, what's known as a PASS plan. I've mentioned this in a past story though, and we'll share that story again, but a PASS is a plan to achieve self-support. That's a different way to maybe buy a higher priced item or something that, a piece of equipment that would make them more employable or give them a better opportunity to become employed. And it's a really cool thing. And I mentioned Scott's Ice Cream, but I'll retell that story in just a moment here. And the third option to get into business that we really have focused on is there's an ARC micro grant here in Minnesota. So this does have some parameters around it, and we'll talk about that in just one moment. But to kick it off, we really wanted to share an example of a business, a small business for somebody who's impacted by disability. So we have a short video about 3 minutes long about Poppin' Joe's Popcorn. You may have heard of them, you may have not. It's a great story. It's a current business that started about 10 years ago or so, but still is in full force here. So I know that we're going to bring that up in just one moment here.
I think we just send it out after class so people can watch it at their leisure.
Oh, okay. thanks for the auto correction. So we actually will send that out then, apologize for that link. It's a 3-minute video, but it really just is a cool story about a young man, I believe down in Iowa, who started a popcorn business. And it really is a cool story about how he's following his passion and started a business. And really, it is a business within a business. He makes this popcorn, he sells it at fairs and other things. But he also has worked with local grocery stores that carry the popcorn and sell it as a vendor as well. So just a really cool story. With that being said, if we'd switch the slide, please. All right, so the Small Business Program at VRS, I'll quickly tell you a little bit about that. Again, it's a great resource. The individual must be currently be certified vocational rehabilitation services. It is a program specific for people that are being served, currently being served. One of the coolest things is, again, that it really focuses on their interest and their passion, and it derives from their own business concepts. So people come to us when they think they have a business concept and they want to pursue this. And one of the big things about this program is it really is person-centered and person-driven, I think is a more accurate phrase right there. Somebody who's already doing the research, somebody who's doing has a passion for this, somebody who's already doing some of the nuanced work on the side. And certainly that somebody can be also very skilled, but in order to utilize this program, they are going to be the actual small business owner. And so they would have to be able to do a lot of the requirements that we ask of this program, which is, what is the marketing? What does the daily operations look like? What are the checks and balances and things of that nature? And certainly they may not be an expert in all those things and may have some support systems in place, people that assist them with that. That's definitely a possibility. But it really, again, in order to use this program, somebody has to come to you with an idea. It's a really awesome program because it really opens up to a lot of innovation. We've had individuals who, let's just talk about it real quick here. What are some of people who want to be tutors? We've had people that wanted to, 2 gentlemen that were very successful that wanted to sell baseball cards, essentially vintage baseball cards, and they're actually making 6 figures. I mean, they are buco bucks, one of the highlight success stories of VRS using this program. 2 brothers who are utilize wheelchairs and have very limited physical mobility, had a lot of experience and knowledge in the vintage sports card world, and we were able to help them purchase a lot of their startup equipment to start this internet site, forums to take payments, things like that, video cameras and cameras to take photos of the cards. And so it was a really cool opportunity. In order for anyone to be able to utilize this program, that person must have the business plan must be, after they've written it and sent it in for approval, it must have a reasonable chance of success, be sustainable, and earn at least $7.50 an hour. One real quick tidbit about that is, it's not like we just give money away and give money and here's a check, we approve your plan. It's actually one of these things, if they approve the plan, they have itemized things that they would need, and we could assist them with the purchase to get the business up and running. So let's say that is some flyers or some business cards, or maybe that is a printer, or maybe that is something else that's going to, again, help them start their business, some software. I'm working with an architect right now that has all the hardware, the computers and things, but needs the software and the connections and things like that. So again, just a really cool program. If you have somebody that may be a good fit for this and they're working with VRS, talk to your VRS counselor for more information. I'm one of the 2 of the part of the team for the Small Business Development Group, so certainly reach out to me as well if you have any questions on that. All right, the next slide, please. So again, just to kind of share a quick story and talk a little about the Plan to Achieve Self-Support. It's actually a program that's through the Social Security Administration. The person does have to have SSI, Supplementary Secondary Income, and then as a cash benefit that they're receiving, that's just the usual SSI. And it can also be in conjunction if they have SSDI as well. However, they can't just have SSDI, the prerequisite is that they do have to be receiving SSI. It's such a cool program. So the best way to describe it is you can utilize it in a couple of different ways, but one of the best ways that is called resource ownership. And right here, I've told the story earlier this spring, but I'll tell it again really quickly, is I was working with a gentleman named Scott, and he had a passion for cooking, wanted to get into that industry, was bussing tables and doing some dishes and things like that. Well, I had mentioned to his employer after going to a trip to Montana and learning about past programs and learning some of these nuances. And I had a really good relationship with the employer. And one of our conversations when I was checking in on when Scott was working was, hey, I learned about this new program. We could potentially, if there's more opportunity for Scott, he could potentially buy a big ticket item and really generate money for you. Well, that was, I didn't mean it for actually to come to fruition as it did. But like 3 months later, that employer actually reached out and said, hey, remember when you mentioned that program, that PASS thing? One of the things that we need in our company is that we're buying, this was for a local restaurateur. She owned about 7 or 8 different businesses, restaurants here in the Twin Cities. And she was purchasing ice cream from a local high-end ice cream maker, which was quite expensive. And so they had talked about as a management team about making their ice cream in-house for cost savings, but they didn't necessarily want to invest the capital in buying this machine. And this machine was over $17,000. It was actually over $30,000 new, but we bought it refurbished and it had a 3-year warranty on it. I should say Scott bought it. And what happened was 2 different things. When you use the program, you're able to still receive your SSI check if your PASS is approved. You're still able to receive your SSI check and work without your benefits being affected, your cash benefits being affected. And what happens is, so you're able to earn an income and you're able to earn your SSI check, but you take the money from your SSI check to either pay back the loans that you're trying to generate capital and buy something, or to save up for that certain item. For instance, for Scott, we actually raised the capital from several different parties. And so we raised that money. And so his SSI check then went to repay the individuals. If they didn't have the capital and they wanted to explore this option, if the person was working, and the PASS was approved, let's say they wanted to, buy a lawnmower, right? To start a lawnmowing company. They could, if the PASS was approved, they could be saving their money from the SSI check, so it's not affected while they're working. So they're getting their full check and saving it towards that actual lawnmower, the equipment needed for that. So it's a lot of information. Just wanted to share that story because it was a really cool program. It was a lot of work. It was kind of a new frontier. Overall, though, it was an awesome opportunity. Here's a young man who was kind of, again, doing the classic dish work and some of the busing and things like that. And he actually really was able to bring value to a company, to multiple restaurants in the area. He ended up making ice cream for them. He went from about 15 hours in the winter, just working 15 hours in general, to working 40 hours in the summertime, if not more. And he was maybe working 25 to 30 hours in the wintertime, as ice cream wasn't as prevalent. But again, just a great example, great resource. Actually, the former PASS plan specialist with DHS has retired, Joni Warner. We're getting that contact information. Margie, I think I actually found out who that was, but until I confirm it, we won't share it. Certainly when we do have that contact, we'll send that out for you. So if you have any more questions about that, feel free to reach out. I'm not necessarily an expert, but I have had experience in that. And it's a really cool program if the stars align for it. So, and then quickly here, we just want to talk about the ARC micro grant. And so this is actually for individuals. So ARC Greater Minnesota, ARC Minnesota has a grant program for individuals. They must be 18 or older and receive receive waiver or personal care, or be a student with an IEP with a level 3 or 4. So there's a little variance there who qualifies for that. But it's really a cool program where it's just, how do we help how this program helps these people live their best life. And so whether it's reaching their personal goals around employment or housing or community, getting into the community, if you have a specific idea that takes a little bit of funding to get that going, this can be a really great program. The link is here on this page, and it can be up to $1,000. Now, certainly, I think the big thing that they would want me to advocate for, it's not like you have $1,000 budget and you're trying to just spend all that money. It's, hey, what do you actually need for your idea to help that out, right? And so I've actually had some experience working with this ARC grant. It's been awesome. It's very easy to fill out. It does go to a committee. You do have to sell it. I'm actually a gentleman on my powerlifting. I'm a Special Olympics powerlifting coach. Unfortunately, the season's not going on this year, but one of my athletes actually just utilized this program, was able to help receive up to several $100s to buy DJ equipment. And so really cool resource right there. So definitely check that out. That's obviously not necessarily associated with VRS, But again, it's a really cool resource. And if the individuals qualify, have an idea, definitely something to help get them maybe some potential funding, capital to start a small business. So, all right.
All right, let's talk a little bit more in general about how to talk to employers. We touched on a lot of this previously when we were talking, so I'm going to go through this pretty quick. But if you guys want me to extrapolate on anything, just throw it in the chat. Margie will prompt me at the end of the slide. Excuse me. But first and foremost, you need to know your job seeker. And if you have done discovery well, you guys are going to know this through and through. So you need to know the tasks that they can do so that you will be able to be looking for ways that they can benefit that business. That is key. That's why we put all that time and energy into discovery, is for this moment now. Know your role. Your role is not to sell your job seeker. Your role is to truly find out how that job seeker is going to benefit that business. Make that business as much of your customer as your job seeker is. And that's how you're really going to get employers to open up their doors, by really looking at that. It helps nobody if you put somebody in a job that you do not know that they're going to be successful at. That is why we take all that time to observe. We just don't base it on somebody saying the job seeker can do something. We took the time to observe it. So that's really going to come to fruition now. Take the time to learn about that business. You're going to be learning about industries, and you're also going to be learning about specific businesses. Each business is going to have its own work culture. Even two Subway stores, even though they look the same and they have the same products, the work culture can differ from Subway store to Subway store. And I've just found in customized employment, there's so much about how the job seeker is going to fit in that work culture that really leads to the success. So take the time. And we know that it's going to be more challenging during COVID. And so you can learn during COVID, but keep in mind, things are going to be a lot easier after COVID, and you can go and you can actually observe, but you can still learn things from conversation. You can still learn things virtually. The best way to get somebody to talk to you is to show an interest in them. And that's what Josh was kind of talking about when he was talking about dating and how you know it's a good date or a bad date. It's about that connection. It's about showing an interest in that person and their business. I cannot tell you how that opens doors. And you're going to need to adjust and learn how to read those kind of nonverbal subtle cues. Sometimes the first person that you talk to at the business is not going to be the right person to talk to. Maybe it's because they don't have the right position, but a lot of the times it's because they might not have the right personality. So you might just ask if another coworker is available so you can talk to them a little bit. I know up here on the Iron Range, sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get people to tell you anything, right? They're like to be simple and concise. They're more like Hemingway than Faulkner, if you know how those authors differ from each other. And so a lot of times you need to have an you need to have a network name to get you in that door. A lot of times you need to be able to read their body language, know when to say goodbye and thank you for their time. But really, when you get people talking about themselves, people like that. That's just human nature. So if you can really show that you're there, you're interested in them and interested in their business, you're going to have much better outcomes. And really avoid that human service jargon. It just gets people just to shut right down. People don't like not to understand the terminology that you're using. Immediately, it means that you're talking more about yourself and what your objective is than about their company. So just really, really watch that. I know some of us have state license plates, and people do sometimes notice that. So they may directly ask you, like, I see you have a state license plate. Are you with the health inspector? Sometimes that can really make people nervous. So you might have to calm their fears a little bit about that. Next slide. Be fun. fun, be nice. Be somebody that you would want to talk to. Make eye contact. Make a joke. It's amazing how much people really respond to that. When I was out with that logger for those 3 hours, I can't tell you how often he just loved the questions we were asking. He often said, "Gosh, that's such a good question," or "Wow, you guys really are observing all the details here." And that just really validated the time he was taking out of his day to be with us, that we really were interested in the industry that he was passionate about. Always reflect and send a thank you. I have a stack of blank thank you cards in my office that I bring with me, so that the job seeker, if they're with me, they can sign that themselves and we mail it right out afterwards. But also an email could be appropriate. Just know your setting and know what's appropriate. But it can be a really big deal, and the thank you is what can actually open the door for the next interaction. So don't underestimate how powerful that can be. The thing that I love about the way we go about informational interviews is I get a lot less no's than I do with traditional job development, because I'm only asking for a little bit of their time. I'm not asking them to hire anybody. And so I get a lot less no's. But you have to be okay with some no's. And you have to understand that a no, if you play a no correctly, it can actually lead to more opportunities. Even if that company doesn't have the time, or that person doesn't have the time, they might be able to direct you somewhere else that does have the time, or is the right type of person that would want to talk to you like that. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, you need to come on Wednesday when Georgie's here. She's been working in this industry forever. She'll chat your ear off the whole day." I'm going to be coming back on a Wednesday to talk to that lady, right? So just really remember, in this instance, you're asking for very little. The stakes are very low. Also know your job seeker. If you're doing some sort of cold calling informational interviews, you need to make sure that they can be comfortable if somebody doesn't have the time for them at that day. I definitely have worked with people that would be shattering to them and would not have good outcomes. And hopefully you've learned that and discovered that during the discovery process. And also remember, sometimes you're going to be at a company and they don't have very much interaction with people with disabilities. They might be really, really nervous about saying the right thing. I get that a lot. They just don't want to say or do the wrong thing. So remember that you're kind of teaching them sometimes. A lot of times what will happen is during an informational interview, if I have the job seeker with me, they will direct all their questions to me. And so what I do is I then direct them to the job seeker. I'll say, "I don't know, Andrew, what do you think about that?" Or, "Andrew, why don't you tell them a little bit about, blank?" I'll redirect it to them. And that's me softly showing them that this person is part of this conversation. And it works well. So keep that in mind. We do have a couple handouts too to help you guys. So we have a handout, I think it's in your student book, and it's called "The Cheat Sheet for Contacting Businesses, a How-To." And it actually has an email written out there that Josh uses. You guys can kind of take that, put it in your own vernacular and make it yours. But we got the framework ready for you. And then we also created, this is new to this session, we created a tips for elevator speech, and that was sent out in the email before class. So it should be there for you guys. And we're going to be actually doing a little activity now. So what Jolene is going to be doing is she's going to be breaking you guys out into pairs. So it's just going to be 2 people per breakout session. And what we want you guys to do is just play with that elevator speech. What are you going to say when you call somebody up and you're asking for an informational interview or an employer presentation? Just practice the words that are going to come out of your mouth. It's really important to practice this and hone this. A lot of times when I'm driving somewhere, I'm actually playing with it a little bit in my head as I'm driving to a location. The more comfortable you can be, The more natural it comes off, the more you practice so you don't use human service jargon, the better your outcomes are going to be. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to take 10 minutes in the pairs for you guys just to practice back and forth. We are not expecting you guys to be experts here. This is just you starting the process of really getting comfortable with engaging with employers. So Jolene, if you want to break us into pairs.
Yes, and the way it works out, there is a couple that will have 3 in a group. So just do the best that you can with that. It didn't equally come out, but mainly 2 people. So here we go.
All right. Well, I think we're all back now, right, Jolene? Welcome back, everyone. We could have had more time in my pairing. I'm not sure if you guys, how the timing was on that. If you could actually put in the chat, if you guys would have liked more or less time, just for us to learn. This is the first time we've done this activity as part of the training. We just like to get some feedback to know. But in my pairing, it reminded me of something I haven't said yet, which I can't believe. And one great way to get in the door, although it didn't technically work for my partner, is to be a customer. I can't believe I haven't brought that up yet. When I went through my customized employment training, they did the same thing where they shoved us out the door and we had to go out and find a small business to go talk to. We went to a chocolatier and we bought chocolates. And while we were buying chocolates, we talked to them. And it was a very natural process. And there's nothing like spending money at somebody's business for them to talk to you. So I'm not going to give you any hints that work 100% of the time, but that's one that works pretty good. So don't forget to be a customer. All right, next slide.
All right. Excuse me. Well, we talked about invested interest in developing relationships, right? That's what informational interviews are. That's how we develop social capital. So how do we do that with a business? As I talked about, small and medium-sized businesses, you're going to get a little bit more detail on this, opposed to maybe a national chain or store or operation. Right here is going to be the slide for Glamdall Donuts. It's a local donut company here in the Twin Cities, young entrepreneurs, really cool. 2 ladies have started this. They got a lot of flavor, a lot of spice and flair to them, and just do things a little bit differently. They have really awesome donuts, but they've also created this kind of cool vibe to their whole business model. So what I always encourage people to do, hey, take that 5-10 minutes and look at their webpage, their social media accounts, right? These are the ways to connect and get information. they're already trying to give you that information to promote their own business. So instead of just cold calling, do a little research. Take the time to find those pieces that you're going to use to connect. And I was just telling my group that I was working with just a moment ago, what I always think about when it comes to job development is, and customized employment, is you're building relationships. When you build relationships, we're trying to make a connection. When we make a connection, we're finding those connecting pieces. And we do that by digging down a little bit, right? Hey, I was on your website. First and foremost, when I say, and opposed to cold calling, when I already am talking to an employer, first of all, if you look down in the pink where the two ladies are, you're going to find the names right there of the two owners with a quick little blurb about them that gives a little flavor of who they are. But now I know who I'm asking for when I'm emailing or calling or going in, right? Two, I'm automatically taking an invested interest. Now tell them that, hey, I was just on your website. It was a really cool website. I heard somebody when we're when we were talking about relating job development to dating, hey, it's always nice to get warm fuzzies, right? It's always nice to be when somebody takes an invested interest in you. Hey, I was on your website. Looks like your donuts are awesome. I can't wait to try some. You know, I know you. I'm interested in learning more about your business, and they're going to give you that information on their webpage. A lot of times too, I found a lot of small, medium-sized businesses have a community page already. Things they're trying to do to promote how they're engaging the community. These may not be job opportunities, but these are a great connecting piece. I was actually working with a printing company. This was several years ago, but I was on the webpage, and on the community page, they said they were doing an annual barbecue to do a fundraiser. And I mentioned that, and the guy kind of looked at me. He's like, "Oh, cool! You're again, and taking an interest in what we're doing aside from our main product, and you're talking about now our philosophy, our business, our work culture, and our values to our business." So again, there's so much information that people have out there. We just have to take the time to read it. And so don't forget about social media. A Facebook page, very common these days. They have Instagram or things of that nature. So again, take that time, do the research, look up that information, and find those connecting pieces that you're going to use when you introduce yourself and make those and start to engage with businesses. All right, next slide, please. So one thing that we wanted to encourage all of you is we wanted to do some more interaction. And really we have, I don't know, who here remembers the show Cash Cab? Yeah. Okay, a few people. It was a game quiz show in a taxi cab, and they surprised different riders. And all of a sudden they're on a game show. And one of the big things was the red light challenge. And so every time they hit a red light, they could double their money by answering a trivia question. So we want to kind of amp things up and encourage you guys. I know that there, again, some probably limited amount of getting out in the community, in your own communities right now, visiting businesses. But next time you are out and you are visiting a business, do a shopping challenge, what we're doing called the shopping challenge. Stop and find, and as you're, and this is the trick to the trade sometimes, is you have the power of being a customer sometimes. And this is a great way to leverage, something really nice to leverage as you're trying to get that practice in. When you are a customer, go in and try to find more information about that business. Why? Because you're spending money there. And what's the response when you're spending money? Usually they're like, how can I help you? What's next, right? Opposed to maybe some of those natural barriers that we get if we try to cold call different approaches. And this is just a soft opening, okay? This is just something to gain practice in. Next time you're shopping, what's a business that I could go and connect with? Here's an example, and it was very interesting because I identified a business need just by walking around. I did this last weekend. I was over at Michael's buying my wife a gift for the holidays, and I wanted to do this challenge in preparation for, to give you an example. And I don't go into Michael's a whole lot. I know they sell arts and crafts, and it smells kind of like pine cones or whatever that smell is in there. And so I was walking around, and I noticed kind of where the manager's office was kind of tucked away in the corner as I was walking around. And as I approached this manager's office, I was just kind of creeping around, not in a weird way, but just doing some reconnaissance, let's say. And I could hear the manager in the office just screaming at the phone because it kept on ringing. I mean, she was cursing at this thing, just like, stop ringing. And And all of a sudden, I was kind of just outside of the office, and she came outside. I could see she was frustrated, and we made eye contact. She was like, "Oh, so sorry, I didn't know anyone was here. How can I help you?" And so I just started asking. I said, "Hey," I kind of made a joke. I said, I looks like a lot of people are taking you away from the customer service here." And she's like, "Oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe. People are just calling me about, do we have this and this? And as much as I want to help them, the phones never end." And we made a joke of it, right? I was trying to empathize with her. And it was one of those things immediately. Wow, I never even thought about that through the holidays. How many people are calling and just saying, "Do you have this one obscure item?" That takes away from her being that kind of utility player to help all of her staff. And we were talking about the business, and of course, it really ramps up right now. There are so many sales going on, so many returns, people trying to restock, the common things we're talking about. But she was open to talk about it, especially because I was there and I had a basket full of stuff. I kept it pretty casual, and I didn't go too far. But again, it's just a great time to introduce yourself, to say, "Hey, I shop here all the time. I love your store." Give compliments, give those warm fuzzies. "Hey, I was wondering a little bit, I'm also doing a little bit of work in your area, in this area. I'm just kind of learn more about your business." Really, obviously, I'm sure COVID's had a wild impact. Has it been good, bad, in between? And so again, take this opportunity next time you're out shopping where you have a positive connection. You may already know that person, that business owner, and see if you can get some more information. So with that being said, we'll roll on to the next slide here. If you have any questions about that, we can answer that in just a little bit though.
I just want to step in and say, I think we went a little bit longer here. We're running a few minutes behind, but I'll tell you what, why don't we just take a 5 quick minute bathroom stretch break, come back in 5, and we promise we'll get done by 12:30. So go ahead and take 5 minutes.
So Margie, just to double check, I had 11:40, 11:50 for the shopping challenge, so I thought we were ahead of time. Obviously not.
Oh, you missed a break back after Glam Doll.
Gotcha. That's why. 10-4.
That's okay. We're running a little bit behind, so I said, let's just take a quick 5. We'll get people back, and we'll try to move along so we get done by 12:30. That'll work.
Hustle and bustle. You got it.
Margie, what time did you say we'd be back at?
I think it was 48.
48. Thank you.
Lindsay, I just sent you a message in the chat.
All right, guys, that says 11:48 on my clock, and we're gonna work on taking a little time off of this next slide. So I'm just gonna hop right in. First off, we're wondering if you guys can put in the chat where you guys might go do your shopping challenge. So once again, we're looking at places you're already gonna be. We don't want to expose anybody to COVID, so we're asking you just to be going to places you're already going naturally as part of your life. So throw in the chat where you guys might be headed. I'm going to talk about the other activity that we're asking you to do as part of your homework. And what we're really trying to do here is come up with ideas during COVID where you can get the same experience as an informational interview. So that shopping challenge, you'll actually be able to visually see the environment. The informational activity challenge that we're going to give you, this is remote. This is virtual. We're not asking you to go in person anywhere. So it's going to be challenging, and we're really excited to hear when we get together next time how these went. So we're asking you to choose a non-big box store because you know what? They're not going to give you the time to do a virtual informational interview anyway. So don't waste your time. Find a local business and see if they would meet with you. If they have virtual capabilities, you might actually be able to see a little bit. You could FaceTime with them potentially, or you might just do a phone call and ask some of the questions. In your book, you should have informational interview tips. And this is great, really helpful when you're doing your first informational interviews. I mean, ideally, you wouldn't want to, if you're going physically somewhere, you wouldn't want a clipboard with these on there. It just prompts you for some ideas, but you could have it out during the phone call. And we really want you to work on the skills of asking open-ended questions. A lot of tell me what you do here, tell me how you got into this industry, tell me what you love about this industry, those type of open-ended questions. Be an active listener. See how much you can get that other person to talk and how much you can listen. Feel free to use your personal network here to find people that you have as part of your network that you can call and ask this of. That's totally fine. You know, maybe instead of, can you show me what you do here? You might ask, can you describe what you do here? Is there a place online I can look at the products? You could ask those type of questions. But try to find some details. Try to find some specifics about that business, about how they function, about their work culture. See what you can find out in this virtual format. We know that it's going to be uncomfortable. When we have people do this in person, we see how nervous people are before we send them out. And it's always fun to see them come back and laughing and relaxed and having had a fun time. So we understand that this is a little bit stressful. It's okay to be out of your comfort zone. The reason we're having you do this is because there's no stakes right now. There's no stakes. So you're just gaining skills. For our next section, you are going to bring back what went well, what you struggled with, what isn't accomplishable remotely. You know, we know that this isn't going to be like being able to go in person. We understand that. And what did you learn? What did you discover? You know, the more that you can find an industry that you don't know about, the easier it kind of is. So you might even, you know, throw out a Facebook message on Facebook saying, I got to find a small business in our area. Does anybody have a contact that I could connect with? Or you might have a list of businesses that you might think would be a good fit. And then you could ask your friends and family and coworkers if anybody has a connection with that business. Obviously, you're not looking for a job right now, right? You're just going to be an active listener. You just want to learn more about their industry and business. Like we said, use social media. Sometimes if you think people maybe won't take the time to speak with you, you might find a company that's hiring and might be more willing to talk about their industry and about their business, even though you're technically not asking for a job. It just might mean somebody's willing to take the time. And then we have a little, I don't know if this is written down anywhere. Maybe we should put it in the chat, Margie. We've got a couple recommendations as to where you could find more information about like taking the stress out of job searches, how to think differently about job searches. So maybe we'll just send it out at the email at the end of the day, Margie. Okay, we're gonna send the links in the email at the end of the day so that you guys can connect with those. So yeah, so we're going to ask for you guys to do this over this before our next class. If there's a reason you can't do this, like I'm personally doing a hardcore quarantine for 10 days starting on Wednesday, I will not be going to any businesses for 10 solid days. So just reach out to your mentor, one of our trainers, if you're not comfortable. But we're asking you to do this remotely. I live off the grid, so I couldn't do it from home. I couldn't come into the office to do it. But most of you guys, I think you'll be able to find a way to accomplish this. But with the shopping challenge, if you're not going anywhere, if you're quarantining, just let us know. We don't want to put anyone in a place that they're not comfortable with. We're just trying to creatively come up with ways that you guys can gain some of these skills during this time, because we know how much the hands-on works. Next slide.
Really quickly as well, as you're doing this, one thing that I found very impactful during this time is city Facebook pages, community pages. People are going on there, connecting, making posts and comments on all sorts of things. But a lot of it is a lot of businesses, small businesses promoting, or other people promoting small businesses and tagging the owners and things of that. So that's just another different way to maybe connect, right? Hey, I was just on I live in Bloomington, Minnesota. I was just on the Bloomington community page. I saw this post and someone referenced you. It looked like you're a cool little business. I was just wondering, would you have any time to meet with me for like 10 minutes and maybe talk over Zoom and learn more about your business? Easy as that, okay? We're going to talk about the other approach, which is more of a formal approach which is called an employer presentation. We always recommend that you have this in your back pocket and you develop this with your team and your organization, because it's one of these things that we're all out there. Let's say you're working with a team of employment specialists at your agency, your organization. We're all out there, but we're all selling Kool-Aid, but are we all selling the same Kool-Aid, right? How is our approach? I actually was working with, Margie and I worked with a provider where they actually had kind of a conflict of interest, because one of the business engagement people were trying to promote enclave work, and the other people were trying to promote community work. So they're going out in the community using their same name, connecting with the same businesses, but selling two different things. So it's really confusing the potential businesses that they were connecting with, right? So one of the things that we love doing, and we're going to show you examples of these, is creating an employer presentation. An employer presentation is a clear, concise presentation that's just 15 minutes long or so, that will tell everybody who, what, where, how, and why, right? Who your agency is, what you do, what your mission is, and really the most important thing here, what customized employment is. And I think I should have started with that. So it's what customized employment is, but it gives maybe some of those backup details about your agency and what you do as well. An employer presentation is really going to build the confidence between you and the employer. It's supposed to be done as well without the job seeker. We've actually had a lot of really good feedback from larger businesses too. Margie and I and the rest of us still use this with small, medium businesses. The larger businesses, which wanted more of a formal presentation or a conversation, this was really helpful for them. And they were able to take this presentation and bring it to their leadership as well to kind of explain more what customized employment was. So it's a tangible resource. Again, we're going to show you some examples of that, but we're going to ask as part of your homework that you actually develop this with your colleagues if you're from the same agency, to develop your own. But again, just really tells the story of who you are, what customized employment is, and gives them different examples of ways to identify their unmet business needs as well. It also has that follow-up step too, which is, hey, let's just continue the conversation, gives them a few different examples of what that looks like. So with that being said, next slide, please.
You want to ask the polling question?
Oh, I apologize. Yes, so the polling question here, if you don't see it, when speaking with employers, it is important to explain to them your work title, what kind of funding is in place, and the rules and regulations you have to follow in your job. True or false? So again, the polling question, if you didn't get it, when speaking with employers, it's important to explain to them your work title, what kind of funding is in place, and the rules and regulations you have to follow in your job title. Hopefully we have the results. All right, well, we have 14% that said true and 86% that said false. And so, again, I think the biggest thing for me is that we are just trying to make a connection on behalf of that individual. There are going to be certain times where you maybe introduce customized employment and talk about your agency, but ultimately, it's not about us, it's about the business, right? As we talked about, let's not be that bad date and talk about our organizations. Let's take that approach, and we're trying to get information about them. Certainly at some point though, they're going to ask us who we are and what we do. That's going to be maybe part of that natural flow, but it's not what we lead out with, okay? I think that's the key thing. We don't lead out with that because that directs the conversation to normally where it goes, which doesn't end up to where we want to be. One of the biggest things with the presentation, this is just like back in high school or grade school or college or whatever it was. Practice, 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 practice in front of the mirror, practice with your friends or family. If you have a small child, maybe even best, right? Hey, sit down, listen to me, maybe give me some feedback. But it really is more of an opportunity for you to bring that script to life. As you know, I'm sure you all can relate with this. How does it feel when somebody is trying to sell you something off of a script? You just don't have time for it. It's, you know, when you get that phone call, that cold call. Hi, Mr. James, how are you today? You know, let me tell you all about these great features. You don't want to go off the script. We have something to follow, but we want to practice that so we can develop our own variances of that. That only happens when we practice it. So again, I think this is something that you ask with your manager, your peers. It takes just a few minutes to do. And most importantly, if you have others in your agency who are doing the same thing, do it together because you're going to learn from each other. I know we didn't have a lot of time to do that in our second group today, but just hearing other people and doing a round robin and saying, oh, that I liked what they just said. I'm going to take that little nugget and incorporate into mine. And then practicing that, and they're going to hear things that they like from you, and you guys are just going to get better and better from doing it more and more, okay? Next slide. Well, we're going to be showing you a few examples here of the actual visual resumes. I'm sorry, visual resumes, employer presentations. So what you're going to see in the next little bit here is you're going to see an employer presentation from VRS, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. You're going to see one from a service provider. And then we're also going to give you a template, which you're going to use to design one for your own agency with your team, okay? So the first one is, again, just an opening cover page, introducing customized employment to business partners. We want to use business language. No human service jargon, or as little as possible, no acronyms. We're spelling things out, and it's the business first, okay? Next page. Remember, this does not have to be all the bells and whistles. Actually, clean and concise is what we're looking for. Less is more. If this is just something that a presentation that we're using as a flow to things, to tell the story, that introduce customized employment. So who is Miss VRS? We have a whole page with a lot more details. We sum that up into one sentence. We are a state agency that partners with Minnesota companies by assisting to match skills and talents of candidates with your business needs. Clean and concise. We don't need to go into all the different action goals of VRS and sub goals of everything else. What's clean and concise? Next. We want to share a story about the individuals. You may not have any stories about customized employment success right now, but the more stories we can tell, that's the selling points right there. That's the best way sometimes is to share what you do, is to bring life to it, is to share your next story. So here's a gentleman named Josh, great name. And he actually got a job at Roseville Chevrolet. They didn't have any work for him, but one of the business needs, just in the general positions they had in the office and on the floor. But when they went in and talked about what wasn't getting done, they had so much business, there was actually a line of people to get serviced, and they would all wait in line until they got up to this booth. And so what Josh does actually is go to those vehicles as they're in line and gets their information so they're all ready to process, ready to go, and to keep that line moving. And it was one of those things that would just happen to be that conversation with them. So this is a great example, again, of customized employment, us getting in there and talking about their needs. Go ahead. Thanks for keeping me on track, Jolene. So with that being said, customized employment, we give that brief definition. We've actually pared this down or trimmed this down a little bit from what we've shown you in the past, and we've made it clear and concise. Typically in the definition, the person kind of comes first. We talk about the business first now, since we've switched that perspective, right? Discovery is about the person-centered. Customized employment, the job development focuses more from that business perspective. Next. Again, so you kind of see the scrolling taglines or scrolling narrative on top. We have some bullet points on different things about what customized employment is. We share different stories. I'm not going to dive into the story right here just because of the time sake that we're going through this, because I want to make sure we give you the example. Here's just a simple formula of how we do business. We listen, or we're learning, we're listening, and we're leading to solutions, right? So when we get out to you, hey, we're learning about your work culture, your operation, your business needs. We're listening to the people that we serve and collaborate with, and then together we're combining it and we're leading towards solutions. What makes sense for both parties? That's customized employment. So here's an easy way to explain that formula of whose role and what we're asking for and how that lays out in customized employment. Next. Again, just another story, a gentleman that we've shared in the past here, a gentleman named Tyler. This actually gentleman was coming out of high school. He didn't know what to do. He was actually told he wasn't going to be able to work, and it was going to be a while before he'd be having to apply to any places. Here's an example where we sat down with an employer, talked about what wasn't getting done. They came up with different things for him to get involved in because we introduced him and what he was interested about and how we can contribute. Next. What we can do for you. Again, you don't want to overpromise and undersell, but here in a clean, concise way are 6 bullet points that what we can do for them. Hey, we want to learn about your business. Oh, okay. We're going to jump past that. So we're going to,
Sorry, Josh, it's just out of control right now.
It's all right. It's 2020, so we just go with that. It's all meant to be. So that's how the perspective we're taking this morning. No problem. So here's the picture perfect. These are some engagement slides, and these are really impactful. These are the things that you're going to do to get them talking now. Hey, I'm just using Dan because I see him in my site. Dan, is your day picture perfect? What doesn't go on? What's not going right? Next slide. Hey, so that's the next slide. So keep on going. There's a few questions here to get them involved. What would you do if you had an extra pair of hands? And then let them answer that question. Okay. And the biggest thing as we're doing this, so just real quick, we actually did, this was about 1.5 years ago, we did actually a business engagement event where we actually had about 7 or 8 businesses, maybe it was 10 businesses come in and learn about customized employment. And I actually printed these out as a worksheet. What's not getting done? What would you do with an extra pair of hands? Tell me about your busy day. And actually I had them write their name, their contact information, and then they filled this out. And then I was able to follow up with them, and they already told me some of the basic information to connect with them and follow up on. They already told me what wasn't getting done. That was a great connecting piece to follow up with them. So anyways, what we want them to take away, hey, this is where we don't hard sell. Are you hiring? Do you have a position? X, Y, and Z. The ask should be, we hope that you consider a new way of thinking about employment and hiring people with specific skills and abilities to meet your needs. Does that sound pretty non-invasive? Yeah. Does that seem pretty reasonable? Absolutely. Will most businesses, do you think, say, yeah, we will take that away and consider that? Yeah, absolutely. Next slide. So the next steps, and I guess that's always the next thing is, what is that next step? What is that follow-up? And the simple way with the easy ask is, let's continue that conversation, right? It's just like the second date. I would love to talk to you a little bit more. This was a really great meeting. let's be respectful of that. But hey, I'd love to continue that conversation if what you found I presented today was valuable. A couple suggestions would be maybe it's a tour of your business. Maybe it's being open to an information or interview. Maybe be taking further look into doing a job analysis about your business and some of the things that we can maybe identify where somebody can meet those needs. Next up, the next slide. And of course, you want to have just that follow-up page where they can contact you. I will say in any business engagement that you do, you of course want to have your business cards and things like that. Tip to the trade, always get their contact information so you can follow up on at your convenience as well. So even though we supply that, we make that prevalent and relevant and available for them, get their contact information as well. So with that being said, you can see this is an example of the one that we created for VRS. We don't insist that everybody use this, but we certainly encourage it. But now we're all at the same page, right? We all are selling the same message, and it really makes our job easier. You know, we have something to follow, a sequence process to direct that conversation when we engage in employers. So, and the biggest thing though, as we talked about, it's just practicing that. So it's whether that's with yourself, with your team, or practicing in real time with some businesses. Try that out. That's going to be part of that the homework moving forward, is to create one on behalf of your agency and try it out as well. So with that being said, we want to just quickly show one that's from actually a provider, not an agency. Here is Proact. They're down in Eagan. They're a provider that did a lot of center-based work, but we're really transitioning to community integrated employment. They're a really cool organization. I think we have a few people in our class right now that are from that organization. And so it really is something that they created. So it has a different flavor of text to it, if that makes sense. So we're going to roll into that here. People, partnerships, professionalism, and they have their own stories, right? Here are some of the people that they've worked with, employers, that jobs that they're able to share with with potential new employers. Go ahead. It talks about a little bit more. These are the nuances about their own agency, our method of workforce readiness. You know, how do we do that? Is that going to be, we want to train, innovate, coach? What does that look like? I love that they use this pie chart because it can come out in any of those different angles and sequencing, right? But it gives a layout of kind of what they do without getting into the nitty gritty of their organization and the human service field. This is what we do to help people get into the workforce. Okay. It talks about WIOA and really just, this is something they chose to put in here. This is more human service oriented, but it also talks a little about, give them the outlet, a lot of the employees, an outlet to talk about their passion about getting people back into meaningful employment jobs for high quality jobs for regular wages. So next, we'll kind of buzz on through this. Again, I think this is a great example, is when we do discovery, here's a gentleman that we worked with in the past. He is a kind of in-house doing some work experience. There's some work at the DAYS program. And then here's him actually getting that job. So they actually show that visual resume to actually him getting that job, which just helps the new employer conceptualize how this would work. Go ahead. And just talks about the good business about it. It gives a little, talks about the positive return on investment, how this is going to contribute to both the business and the individual, how this is an innovative process to look at hiring new people, to include them and to bring value to their company, and just to really improve the overall employee engagement as well. So these are going to be specific, of course, to your agency or your organization. That's why we want to give you that little variance of from a state agency versus a provider, how we both represent things. And it really is to whatever your agency comes up with. Next. This is something that finding the right matches, and this is actually something that we learn from them and we use in our training now, which is, hey, it's putting the individuals in the right places, right? It's finding them positions, finding them work and jobs that meets their skills, interests, and ideal conditions. And the reason why this one was impactful is that we see the person working here and outside. We would never get them a job doing the data entry. And we never take the data entry person and say, hey, let's get you a job outside doing stuff with nature, right? It just doesn't make sense. And so this was a great example visual to really help employers see how we're trying to differentiate ourselves from other potential organization or providers that are assisting people getting work. So next, how do we get there? There's a few animations. I don't know if they're actually gonna go here. There it is. So this is just something, a conversation piece that they use to generate the conversation, the customization methods, analyzing the business needs. That's the partner, connecting. Vocational professionals connect job seekers with employers. And I'm sorry, that starts from the bottom. Discovering the person, making that connection and starting with that partnership, creating that partnership. Next. Again, just a common goal, finding those commonalities. This is an opportunity where they actually share their stories. One thing that we're not able to share with you, and we apologize, usually we have a hard copy of this. And well, I'll finish this, but so usually you have a hard copy and we actually have notes on the opposite pages of this, so you can be shared electronically or done in person. Next, please. And again, these are the two of the professionals that helped create this. And there they are right here. Some follow-up information, what's the next step? And so again, just you see a variety of some variety in between the two different presentations right there. So we know we threw a lot of information at you. Just to kind of sum it up, we're just going to run through this basic template, which is going to be sent to you or already has. This is going to be part of your homework, which we'll talk about, but hey, we want to give you a basic template to go off of, right? So here it is. Jolene, you can just kind of scroll through this and we'll just keep it real. Name of agency and the mission of the agency. A couple stories with photos and some text that really share what you do. What is customized employment? A definition. You can use this one right here. You know, share some more stories as you're talking about customized employment and introducing it. Yep. Kind of a formula for success, more photos for stories for success as well. What we can do for you, right? What does that partnership look like? What are those things? And so we're going to give you the examples of ours as well, but figure out what that is for your agency. Work together. Don't overcommit and underdeliver. This is where you can say it clearly, concisely, and really start to develop those partnerships and lay that out how that would work. Next. Again, these are your engagement slides. Those were does your day look perfect? What would you do with those extra pair of hands? Incorporate those. Those are just stuff that Margie, myself, other trainers, we came up with, right? All the professionals. They could be more engagement questions, different graphics, things like that. Use your own innovation and ingenuity to make it better than ours, right? Whatever we can do, you certainly can do, and most likely do it much better than us. You just have to share that secret sauce with us when you do make it better. So, all right, always talk about those next steps and then just questions. Give that opportunity to continue that conversation on. So with that being said, I know that was a lot of directives, a lot of explaining with not a lot of interaction. What are your thoughts about the employer presentation, and do you have any initial questions about it? Can you see how it makes sense that you would want this as a potential resource to introduce customized employment? You know, it's always one of those things too, is I always say it's an idea when you think of it, it's a plan when you write it down. And part of the interaction is, yeah, I can tell you and regurgitate and explain to you all you want, but they're not going to retain all that. It's really nice to have something concrete that they can take away and refresh themselves on. And again, bring to their team or their leadership to explain this. And the feedback we've gotten, especially from the larger businesses, perfect. This is what we were looking for. That's really led to further conversations down that road as well. And to be honest with you, a lot of employers have just said, we like that you haven't asked us for a job or are you hiring, really just introducing what you guys do, what customized employment is. And so we can go back and mull that over. So any questions though on the employer presentation? Okay, well, we will, if you do, please let us know, voice up or put it in the chat. If not, we'll talk about a little bit about the homework.
Wow, Josh, you just shaved some minutes off of that. I'm very impressed. We're right back on track. Look at this.
I think it was just because the auto control scrolling, which was totally fine. It worked out perfectly. It was intentional.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to get you out of here on time, as you can tell, because we're talking about homework now. So what we are asking you to do, this is both for auditors and for students. We are asking you to work on that elevator speech. Just keep practicing how to casually engage in conversations with companies and employers and employees about what they do at their business. We're asking you to do that in-person shopping challenge. Once again, if you're not comfortable, if you're not going places, clearly we're not asking you to do that. But everybody else who's maybe going shopping, picking up something, we want you to use some of those skills that you learned today. We know that the sooner you can put it into practice, the better it is. We're asking you to do a virtual informational interview. So this is where you don't go anywhere. You might FaceTime, you might have it on a phone call, you might do a Zoom, whatever you can get to work for you. And we're really interested in you bringing back next time what worked, what didn't work. This is the first time we've tried this virtually, so we understand that it's going to be challenging. We're asking you to create an employer presentation if your company does not already have it. If your company has it, we want you guys to get a copy of it and look it over and get comfortable with that. Our next class dates are January 13th and 14th, where we will be meeting once again over Zoom. So that's when we'll be meeting next. Any questions come in the chat, Margie? Any questions? Does anybody have any questions on the homework or what's expected?
I don't see any questions coming across in the chat yet. I will be sending out the after class email later today, and I will be putting these templates in there. So if you're a little worried about, oh my gosh, what did we just scroll through quickly? You will get a copy of it. So no worries there. And the employer presentation, work on it as you can. We're not asking you to have that completed by our next class, but you know, want you to start thinking about it.
I had a thought in my head and I just plumb forgot what it was. But we want to thank Jolene. Looks like she's saying something.
I just wanted to jump in here quick, Lindsay, and say that any of our MSOC staff, Lindsay and I have created a template to use. So if you could just reach out to me by email and I will send that to you. Just wanted to put that little plug in. Thank you.
Oh, great point. Thank you so much. I should mention, so if your organization has, somebody from your organization has gone through this process already through the CE training, they may have already developed a customized employer presentation. So for those who worked at ProAct, you wouldn't necessarily need to create a new one. You would maybe want to modify it. You know, they had old staff on there, things like that, old colleagues, things of that nature, but more revising it. But if you already have one for your agency, you don't have to create a new one. Just be able to present that moving forward. One other quick thing, just a tidbit is obviously try to make that connection. We have the holidays right around the corner, limited time, but some people may be willing to have a conversation with you this week or next. If not, try to set it up for right after the holidays. I know that window is very small between our next class period then, but that's a great way to just kind of acknowledge a busy season already. Hey, I know you're very busy. I want you to wish you a happy holidays. Would it be possible if we set something up for the first week of January just to connect afterwards? A lot of people will actually take that out and say, yeah, and then you'll have to schedule that now or right after and follow up. So again, I don't want you to necessarily rely on that because it will shorten that length of time in between the homework being done and you being able to do it. But that's just a suggestion if you run into that barrier of people don't have time right now right before the holidays.
And luckily people talked long enough, so I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say, please take a look at those attachments from the email before the class. There's a lot of tools that you can utilize during the homework you guys are going to be doing. So we got quite a bit of stuff out there for you. So make sure you utilize those tools to help you through that. Next slide, Jolene.
Well, I just wanted to.
Go ahead, Margie.
Okay, I wanted to say one thing. I'm taking attendance and I got everybody except there's a Galaxy S10. I don't know who that is. And I don't know who the phone number 952-221-7757 is. So if you can let me know quick or you can email me, I'll get you checked off in the attendance. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, this is Lori Piper.
All right, so we know the
Thank
phone
you.
number. We're just waiting for the Galaxy phone. So if you don't
That's
write
me.
it, and who's me? Oh, you're the Galaxy phone? Oh,
Lori, yeah, I'm the Galaxy. Yeah.
oh, you're showing up
Thank
on
you.
different things. Huh. Interesting.
So I just real quickly here, because in the chat, somebody asked and it was already answered, but somebody from MSOC said, hey, if we already have one for our agency, can we make it specific towards our team or our specific location? I love that idea. Make it personable, right? Make it your own. So just because we have one for VRS, certainly maybe you do Bruce and his team does it a little bit differently up in the north, right? Add that little bit of community flavor of where you're at and your team and make it specific. So definitely encourage you to do that if you're willing to. So.
If there's not any other questions, we're going to be able to wrap up even 7 minutes early, but us trainers will stay on here to see if anybody has any questions that they want to ask us specifically. Otherwise, thank you so much for your engagement today. We know these virtual trainings are challenging, so we really appreciate you guys really bringing your A game. Have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you January 13th, I think is what I said.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You do a fabulous job.
Thanks, Christine.
It was fun today, and sorry I didn't have a video, but I was able to hear everything this time then. So I figured out technology in the best but worst way. But awesome job, you guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like you, your little emoji there.
I know your
I-
avatar game is strong.
I do my best, you guys, and that's totally my hairdo right now with those glasses on. Take care.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I got a question for you.
Yes,
Continuing off our little pairing there.
yes.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, because you're Virginia Hibbing area and we were talking about Duluth and everything else. So in one of the things it says, try to stay away from the professional jargon and all this and that and everything else. So when you do the informal interview and you're kind of, did a little research on the little family mom and pop business or this and that and everything else. And you go in and you try to strike up the conversation, everything else. And if they look at you and go, well, why do you want to do this? Or why do you want to do that? And you kind of get stuck in like, well, here, do I cross the line and just not tell the truth? Or do I kind of whatever? When should you, if they present that question, start to say, hey, I work for the ACT team in St. Louis County and I'm just trying to get some research on some of your stuff because
I help people with employment. I try to be really, really general. I never use the word disabilities or mental health. I never do that. But I read their body language. So I get sometimes people get real resistant to me. And a lot of times nothing's ever going to go anywhere with those people. But sometimes you can break through it by just saying, I know this seems kind of weird what I'm doing. What my job is to help people with it be successful in employment. And I need to learn more about your industry because I don't really know anything about it. And I don't know how somebody is successful in your industry. So I still keep it really vague. But there are times they're just resistant to outsiders a lot of the time up here.
oh God, yeah, I get a lot of that in Duluth.
They're suspicious. And so I'll try it like just a couple times. Like, I just want to learn more about your business. And they're like, well, why? And you can be
exactly.
like, well, I just don't know anything about it. It just seems so fascinating. Okay, what are you really here for?
Yeah, I know.
Like, I help people with it.
I don't want to start treading into, lying and not presenting well and everything else. So, all right. So then my second follow-up to that is that, if I had my druthers, I would like to do the informal, or the II meeting.
Yes.
I'm getting my two names mixed up and who's front and who's second. My II meeting, I'd rather do that myself, with not having the client. But once again, I work with all independent living clients, no